everyone, and welcome to the LFC Roundtable podcast. I'm your host, Taran Armstrong, and today we have brought you our final LFC Roundtable podcast of Big Brother 19. It's sad, but also joyous. So today, Melissa is she's traveling, so she's going to miss out on this one. But we did bring in two excellent guests to fill in. And so first, I've got Puya with me. How you doing, Puya?
I'm good, Taran. I said it earlier. I'm going to say it again. Thank you for saving me from the bagels. I'm glad to not be at work right now.
Yes. For anyone that doesn't know, Puya, he does, life-saving work. Every day he goes and he fights off the evil bagels that are trying to take over the world, really. And we're giving him a break here. It's dangerous work, but somebody has to do it. We've also got Liana with me here. How are you doing, Liana?
Doing well, but I just really want to give up the roundtable to you guys. I just don't think I should be here, and I'm just willing to give everything up. So,
yeah. Did you break something recently? Is that what's happening right now?
Yeah, exactly. My larynx is damaged, and I'm just giving podcasting up.
Yes, and of course, I've got Brent with me here. How you doing, Brent?
Very excited to be a part of this podcast. I think this is the first time that me and Liana have been together since the end of RuPaul's Drag Race. So this should be very fun.
Yeah.
Oh, girl.
I know, right? And by the way, did you see I tweeted Aja and Sasha fighting with a napkin dispenser earlier today? It was very, very fun.
No, I'll have to check it out. That is way more important, really, than anything that's going on in Big Brother. So, yeah.
It's everything. Aja's like, she keeps like bitching at the napkin dispenser because every time she walks past it, it spits out a napkin because, you know, it sees her hand going past. It's just, you have to see it. It's very, very fun.
I know this may sound like a tangent, but this is probably the most exciting thing we're going to talk about.
Wow.
That's why I felt like I could say it.
Ru also, he was playing the role of Emmy on the Emmys last night. That was pretty exciting.
And played it very, very well. I was actually living for that because every year they cut out the Best Host Emmy. Even back when Jeff Probst won it, they started presenting it at the Creative Arts Emmys. The first year they gave Best Host, they presented it at the regular Emmys, okay? Like it should be, all right? And then the second year, they went to the Creative Arts Emmys, which are fine, but it's not the main show. And then ever since then, they've done that. So Ru, when she won Best Host last year and again this year, again at the Creative Arts Emmys, not on the main show. So I'm glad they got her on the main show this year.
Yes. Unfortunately, American Ninja Warrior did not win for Best
I was hoping.
Show.
I mean, if RuPaul's Drag Race did win, I was hoping for A&W, but The Voice?
Yeah, who watches that? Come on.
Can you name me someone on The Voice who I know of?
I don't even know who the judges are anymore at this point. Like, I know Adam Levine and Blake Shelton Writer's still there, but I don't know. Turning chairs is like a pretty cool technology, and so I think people are really into that.
Wow. They saw that, we really revolutionized the concept with So You Think You Can podcast, and they were just like, man, we really like this kind of format where there's like coaches. Yes. Speaking of American Ninja Warrior, it's the season finale is airing right now. So again, you probably won't be able to find us in the crowd this time. It's a little bit harder for stage 2 and potentially above. However, if you want to try, you can maybe find me on that episode. And of course, we're going to be covering it on our season finale coverage for American Ninja Warrior. Lots of stuff happening there. But we are here on this Monday night to talk about Big Brother 19 and everything that's happening on the live feeds. But I think for the most part, this is going to be more speculation about what may happen than it is going to be about like recapping what is happening. But we do have the chat room open on RHAP-ups and you can send questions in to me at Armstrong Taran on Twitter. So let's get right into this. We usually start this with a quick recap of the week. What's been happening over in Big Brother 19 land, and basically what's been happening is I've got a few facts listed out. Paul has won part 1 of the final 3 HOH. Josh has won part 2 of the final 3 HOH. Paul plans on taking Josh to the final 2. Josh plans on taking Paul to the final 2. Christmas plans on telling Josh and Paul to take each other to the final 2. And that's about where we stand with the live feeds. Puya, how do you feel about this?
All right. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Good night. This is pretty much where we're at. And you've summed it up perfectly. We're at this point now where it's looking very much like Josh has completely been sold on the idea of taking Paul. I feel like it's still one of those things where if he does win that competition at the end, you never know. Sharing looks, he has to look at Christmas in the face and tell her that he's not taking her. I guess the foil in that plan is Christmas is willingly third place. So it's looking like it's all set in stone. We got to see where the jury's at. We got to see how they deliver their speeches. That's where we're at.
Yeah. And like, honestly, I think it's gotten to the point where if Josh tried to take Christmas, she'd be like, don't you look me in the face while you do this. I can't believe you. This is unbelievable that you'd betray our team and give me $500,000. Oh boy, Josh. Liana, how do you feel about all this mess?
Well, that's what's so funny is that I could totally see that happening because Christmas will be offended if Josh takes her, which is baffling to me. I can see her trying to convince Josh in that moment if Josh is wavering and thinking, okay, I might actually try to take Christmas. I can see Christmas convincing him to not take her. This is very reminiscent of like when Alex was like, oh, no, I don't want to split the votes. Like, let's not split the votes. It's these people that are doing things that are actively disadvantaged to them. Like so clearly. It's so, oh my goodness. I don't know. I really don't know.
Yes, well, Christmas, obviously, she doesn't have the choice anymore, and it does appear that both Paul and Josh, at the moment at least, do plan on taking each other. Brent, do we feel like at this point Christmas is just basically out of it? Does she really have no real shot of getting to the end?
Not only is she out of it, but I also feel like the show is out of it because I thought, when we saw that Christmas broke her foot during the first week, I said, I was ranting about, the final three. How is she going to compete in these final three competitions? I couldn't find one final part two that she could ever do, or even like a part one. And then, she suddenly got healthy enough and they started like coaching her on, if you fall, make sure you fall the right way so you don't hurt your foot, which I didn't know they were going to do. So that was the only drama coming into this week. I thought they were going to have problems creating drama, and they are going to have problems creating drama, but it's not coming from where I thought it was going to come from. It's coming from the fact that Christmas is totally willing to fall on her sword, and somehow she thinks it's noble. She talked about taking a knee when she was telling the live feeders that she was going to bow out gracefully in third place and allow Josh and Paul. This is very reminiscent of when Rob Cesternino talks about people saying, well, I'm the real winner of the story. I won because I did this. I feel like you called it. I mean, I'll give you credit, Taran, that you called it like week 3, week 4, when you said that Christmas has totally given up on this game, that she doesn't think she can win anymore, and she just wants to get to the end with her team. That's what's happening right now. It's really, really frustrating because she could be the winner of Big Brother, and she's like, no. I was talking to a friend of mine earlier about something totally unrelated, and I said, you have to be willing to say yes to the casino. If you win a little bit at the casino, you have to be willing to say yes and walk out. And I feel like Christmas is that person. Like, she's unwilling to say yes to a win. Instead, she's like, no, I'm going to run it all into the ground and lose all of my money and take a loss at third place. You don't take a knee when you're behind. You take a knee when you're out in front by 20 touchdowns, and then you have to run out the clock, girl. Bye.
She really should take a foot instead of a knee because she needs a new one.
Thank you.
Karen in the chat says, I heard it, Taran. Brent gave you credit.
Aw, we should mark this momentous day.
They also call it when you're wrong and you never seem to remember. You're like, I didn't say that. I qualified that.
You make things up. That's what happens.
I don't know what you're talking about.
This is like mom and dad are fighting, guys.
Brent never has the receipts. Never. All right.
Well, it's actually, no, it's funny. That's so true with Christmas not saying yes. Like, she's not willing to, I don't know, like lick a gift horse in its mouth or lick a gift unicorn's horse in its mouth. Like, just accept these gifts, please.
Yes.
Now, my thing is, does Christmas, because I know Josh and Paul have been saying this repeatedly, I can't recall, does Christmas think she's a lock for AFP? Does she think she's got a shot at winning that 25K?
I mean, it's mostly been Paul and Josh who've been like, she's totally going to win. But you can tell, like, she thinks that she has a really good shot at it. I mean, she won the second temptation. I mean, as far as she knows, there's nothing that's going to, like, stop that from, like, changing. So I really do feel like she thinks that she has this in the bag.
I actually forgot that she won the second temptation. That's how far and long ago that seems. I can see why, without any information otherwise to the contrary in the House, they are thinking that, well, if we're in the final two, Christmas has to be a lock for America's favorite. I can't wait for the face cracks, Liana. I have to tell you.
I know. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited when they announce the top three. I really think it's gonna be better than Frankie.
I think so too, because they're so certain of where it's not going and who it could go to.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
I've put out a poll. As I do. Who knows how predictive this poll will be for America's favorite player? This is the first time I've done an America's favorite player poll. However, Cody is leading the vote by a fairly large margin here. He has 50% of the vote, with nearing about 5,000 votes in so far, with Kevin behind him at 34%. And then Josh, who was in the top 3 of the previous poll I had put out, lagging very far behind at 5%, and then 11% have chosen other. I'm only going to assume that Cameron is all 11 of that percent.
Well, I was going to say 2 things. Number one, stick a fork in it. It's done. I have not seen one poll where Kevin is beating Cody. Cody has this thing on lock. Cody is America's favorite house guest. Girl, bye. Now, the real drama is going to be who comes in that 3rd spot. They're going to announce the top 3 as they usually do. It's going to be Cody, Kevin in some order, and somebody else. I'm intrigued to see as who that could be. I don't want to burst our bubble of happiness here for a second, but based on the things that I hear from stupid people who are casuals and on the internet, I feel like possibly Alex could get 3rd place because she had a lot of TV time and because people think she's so cute and cuddly if they don't watch the feeds. Liana, are you with me on this?
Yeah, so this is actually my concern too, because I think it was, it'll be, Cody, Kevin, and Jessica. Well, the people who would have voted for Jessica are all banding behind Cody. So Jessica's actually probably not going to come in 3rd, and I can see it being someone else. Okay, so then who is it? And I really, I hate to think that Alex is the type of person who's going to get that 3rd spot, but, her edit was really, really good. And I know a lot of people who are rooting for her who don't know about her, awful behavior on the feed. So I could very much see Alex falling into that 3rd slot.
See, this almost...
she's the one person that did promote herself while she was walking out the door for that slot. So these casuals, if they dumb enough, and they are going to go that way.
See, this makes the Cameron for America's favorite player campaign even more important. This isn't just about sending a message to production. This isn't just about, giving some justice for Cameron. This is about preventing Alex from being able to say I was in the top 3 for America's favorite player. We need Cameron in that spot.
Yeah, we do.
We need
Wow.
Alex to not be there. Let's get Cameron there. That would be crazy just to begin with. The person who is only in the house for 12 hours being in the top 3 over Alex, that would be amazing. That's all I'm saying.
His ratio of votes to time in the house would be off the charts. That would be really impressive.
And he deserves being in the top 3 for the shade that he threw on Twitter today. If you don't follow him on Twitter, you should.
Yeah.
So good.
And honestly, they are much more apt to bring people back who, get into the top 3 of these kinds of votes. And if any kind of vet is going to be brought back, have it be somebody that didn't actually play, because they're not a real vet, right? Let's not have it be Alex because we never want to see her back.
No.
Exactly.
Can you imagine Alex somehow falls backwards into being asked back? That was her plan the whole time.
She wanted. Yeah. That's her whole plan coming into this season. She said she wanted to lose so she would be invited back. I refuse to let that happen, you all.
Yeah, see, everybody, the votes are already locked in. Cody is so far ahead. There's everybody just put a pause, give Cameron half your votes. And it's not like Cameron is going to come in and beat these people. No, but he might come in 3rd. He might displace Alex from that spot. So
I love Cameron, honey. But even if Cameron actually got all of the votes, I don't even think production would read it. I really don't. I'm serious at this. I think you're better off, and I love you, Cameron. I do.
No, see, you're gonna split the vote right here.
I'm gonna inject a little bit of reality into this.
You're ruining it.
If you want
if Alex gets there, it's all Brent's fault. That's all I'm saying.
If you want to stop Alex from being 3rd place, I think you have to vote for Whistlenut. I mean, you have to. have to.
See, Whistlenut was way far behind in my poll. I don't know about this. See,
I can't find somebody else.
We can all rally behind Cameron. If there's an internet contingent, they can all rally behind Cameron. Whistlenut, he's a risk. Who knows? You gotta go with Cameron here.
You think at this point in time, Cameron has racked up more votes than Whistlenut?
Look, you never know.
Look, thank you, Liana.
People, no,
shut that bitch down.
There was somebody on Reddit who actually did the math. The people who are on the website voting 20 times a day, their vote counts like way more than the casuals who are just going to vote on occasion. And those people are much more likely to vote for Cameron than Jason, because Jason, somebody who had a lot of controversy over the course of the season. People who are voting 20 times a day, they're aware of that controversy. So I do feel like Cameron has a better chance here.
I think
if we get behind him, we don't split our vote.
Well, okay, so that's the thing, right? This is about mobilizing an army to prevent Alex from getting in the top 3 of America's favorite player. Like, that's how we have to sell it. Because we just need to pick the best horse, glittery, farting unicorn, and ride that thing to the end and get in that 3rd spot. So if we're trying to decide who we think could be best, I think Whistlenut's up there. I think Mark is up there. It might also be people that we could consider.
See, now we've split it 3 ways. We've just ruined everything.
Oh, no. This is
all right, I'm shutting up. Moving on.
All right. So moving forward, it does appear as though Christmas is out of the running at this point. However, you never know. Josh, he's a bit of a crazy dude. He could always change his mind at the last second. He's said multiple times, like, you know what, I may just decide at the last second what I'm going to do. I do think that he is much more likely to take Paul at this point based on what he's been saying, but I don't want to rule it out at this point. I don't think it's as locked as previous Final Threes have been. I think that Christmas has a halfway decent shot of being taken if Josh wins. And then I do think that if Christmas goes up against Josh, she has a halfway decent chance to beat him. So I do think all 3 players are live here coming into the final 3.
I do too.
Puya, do you agree?
Yeah. We've alluded to this before, where I feel like Josh is the type of person who his emotions are going to be live. I don't know, like his speeches, his things he's coming up with to talk about, not so much. But this is the type of guy who's going to stand there, and whatever his emotions are at the time, that's how he's going to react. So there is an outside chance that he does end up looking at Christmas and goes, no, she's been with me from the beginning. I've been saying repeatedly to these cameras all this time that I want to clip Paul. I have the chance here. I can take the shot. He can feel the burn. And there's so many things that will go through this Meatball's head that he's gonna react that way. I feel like there's a chance it's gonna happen. And I feel like it could, and if it does, then yeah, Christmas still has a shot. There's still a horse or a unicorn in this race with Christmas.
Yeah, I mean, this is the part where, and I think, Taran, you talked about this on the update this morning, the review of Christmas's game, where all 3, like none of these players are drawing dead at this point. There is a chance that I could see any one of these 3 people winning. I think with Christmas, though, going back to Josh's emotional decision that you talked about, Puya, Christmas is appealing to him from an emotional perspective of saying, don't take me. Because if logic were dictating Josh's decision, like, well, I don't know, maybe taking Paul is a better decision for him logically. But, you know, from what he stated before, it's Paul would be the person that he would need to cut and need to take Christmas if he's thinking, quote, logically. But since he's just doing this emotional decision, I think emotionally he's still going to feel like he would be willing to take Paul and cut Christmas.
Yeah, I said this on Twitter, but I feel like that Christmas is really screwing us even when she's not trying, because by her not trying to campaign to Paul or Josh to try to take her, that just guarantees that Josh is going to take Paul, which is not what we all want. Of course, Josh still has to win part 3 in the first place. And, you know, we obviously know part 3 is a bit of a crapshoot, but I would like to see him at least take the shot. I said for a long time that if Josh cuts Paul and owns it as the big move of the season, I think he wins in a walk versus Christmas, just because if he is actually able to own it as the jury, like, I got the guy out that y'all wanted out, I did it, it was my big move, my game-winning moment. If he owns it like that, I feel like he wins. There's nothing to fear from for Christmas, I don't feel like. That being said, I do agree with you that all 3 of them are live heading into the final 3, and it's really more live than I ever thought it was going to be based on the things that we're hearing from the producers and Hamster Watch and other places, and just by watching Paul and his delivery of his goodbye messages. And can we also talk, and I'm sure you're going to get to this, but I don't want to forget, can we transpose his goodbye messages versus what he's saying in his final 2 speech? Because I guess if he's going to be honest-ish in his final 2 speech, I don't know why he was lying in the goodbye messages to begin with, Taran.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really understand Paul's logic. I mean, actually, I do. I think I do. I think that Paul, he felt like Paul is bad with confrontation. Like we see Paul confront people a lot, but he's bad with confrontation when he knows that like he feels guilty and he feels wrong. Right. And so like that's why we saw him like do it so terribly with Alex. And I think that the goodbye messages are an extension of that. Like he just couldn't face telling them the truth and knowing that they'd be mad at him. So he's waiting until the very end to be like, yeah, so and then I betrayed you all, and then I also won 10 competitions, and then I stepped in the back, and then I was never nominated. I really feel like he doesn't like having to admit it. It makes him feel uncomfortable, and I really do think that's part of it.
I also think that his jury management, though, it needed to start earlier, right? So whatever he's going to do in this final speech, it really doesn't matter, right? That work has to be put in beforehand. So I don't know why exactly he thinks that he can get away with just then, now that he made it to the end, oh yeah, okay, like that's what I did. I think part of it has to do with just his inexperience with being on the jury side of things, right? And so if he's emotional and he feels like he can't fess up to some of these things that he's done, well, okay, but he doesn't realize how bad of an impact that's going to have, on the jury votes in the end.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I do. I think we can point to his inexperience. I think that I think that his speech is not going to matter at all. I don't think there's anything Paul can do.
His speech is terrible. His speech is effing awful. Like it's really, really terrible. It's really, really long. Now I will say this: that Steve Moses also had a really long speech that he eventually got down to a manageable length that I thought was really, really good. So I will wait to withhold. I'll withhold judgment with Paul when I see the final product, if he is in the final 2. However, what he's doing right now, I want to talk to you guys about this because I just can't get it off. I need to get it off my chest. It is all facts. There is no empathy. There's no personalization. There's no friendship there. I know you made a joke on the Feeds podcast that he was throwing in friendship, but there is no friendship. There's none. It's all, I'm the vet, it was so hard for me, and this is what I did, and I controlled every HOH besides 2, and by the way, those HOHs that I won, I always won the vetoes, so I had ultimate power on those weeks, and oh, by the way, in the goodbye messages, when I was telling you that I didn't know what happened, I actually did know what happened, because I was the one controlling, and he doesn't really say that part, but that's what he's saying by saying, I controlled every HOH, I controlled every vote. I just don't understand the point of his final 2 speech, and beyond the fact that I don't understand it, it's the fact that there's no good heart to it. You know how Josh jokes that he's a human being? I mean, like, Paul does not sound like a human being in this at all. He sounds like a freaking robot. Taran, why does he sound like a robot?
Well, I don't know what you're talking about because facts always convince people of the correct decision.
And he just sounds like he's going off a laundry list of things that he wants to get out, and he's never going to be able to do it. I know watching him, it took like, 7 minutes for him to get through that speech, but I know he kept repeating stuff, so I was trying to figure out, well, how long is the actual speech? And it looks like it's probably about like 4 minutes. Girl, you might have 1 minute, maybe 45 seconds before Julie's like, thank you, thank you, thank you. So I don't know what he thinks he's going to be able to do, but I really feel like he made a miscalculation on those goodbye messages. I wanted to read something really quickly from our national treasure, Arissa Cox. She was talking about Paul, and she said about his goodbye messages, people don't always remember what you said, but how you made them feel. If house guests feel like fools the second they walk into jury and associate you with a feeling of humiliation instead of respect, it's not a good look going into a final 2 vote. So again, we're so lucky to have Arissa Cox. She said it better than I ever could have. And that's exactly what I was talking to you about, Taran, when I said that Paul should be honest, and you said that he should wait.
But see, this is I was going to say that's exactly what I was talking to you about, because I was saying how they feel when they leave is important. So if they don't feel humiliated and lied to, then that's a good thing.
Oh, is that what you're saying? Okay.
Yes. And so like being honest can work, but if you're able to not obviously and blatantly lie to them, that's a lot better. But yes, this also I think makes a lot of sense in terms of you. Like you often feel like I've made a fool of you, so you just automatically feel like I was on the opposite side of things even when I wasn't, and then you claim that I was. So yeah, Arissa, totally on point here.
Well, and the other thing is that that we say this all the time. People have to feel good about giving you the vote, right? So it taps back into the emotion side of things, and even, I think was it Jason who had the interview where he didn't even see what Paul said, because, you get on that stage and okay, these goodbye messages are happening, but you just got evicted, especially if you just got blindsided, you're pissed, you're emotional, you're just feeling all these things. You're not actually going to listen to the content, and they can't go back and rewatch them like we can. So I totally agree with the emotional side playing a much bigger role than maybe the actual words that were even said in the goodbye messages.
Yeah,
what Paul needs is that empathy and that passion that Kevin Martin had in his speech this past season of Big Brother Canada. When I was watching that, you could feel for Kevin. Every inch of his body wanted to get to the end. He lived for that game. He was sitting next to Karen, and no offense to Karen, but that might have been one of the more foregone final twos. I think he knew he had it in the bag. That didn't stop him from expressing how he felt and how getting to that point meant to him. And I want to talk about, I want to touch on what Brent just said about how it's just a laundry list of facts. And then you're going to be sitting next to Josh, who Josh is going to bring emotion into it. Josh is going to speak from a place of passion. So if you're going to be the polar opposite of that, and people have been leaving not really knowing where your head is at, people have been leaving feeling humiliated, people have been leaving feeling cheated, you're not going to win them back by sounding like you did not care about anything they felt except for your own self-gain. But if you speak from a place where this game means the world to you, where nothing will make you happier than to get to this point, and you had to do what you had to do to win, and you love everyone there, then yes. If he wants to act like this, if he wants to go robot, and Taran, there's nothing wrong with being a robot. I just feel like for this speech in particular, for this final two that he set himself up for, it could be for failure.
Yeah, and I think there's no better example of what we're talking about than what happened with Jason, where Jason doesn't even hear what Paul says, but it doesn't matter because what Paul is saying doesn't matter. It's how Jason feels that matters. And Jason he's not even listening to Paul. He's just like counterfeit. That guy's counterfeit. That's really the feeling that they've come away with. And, for as much talk as we're talking about, Paul's final two speech, I don't think it'll matter. I don't think anything he will say can change this jury. I think that his game speaks for itself. And I think that jury is going to come in either planning on voting for him or planning on not voting for him.
Yeah. I hear what you're saying on that, and I do agree with you in large part, but I really do feel like this is going to be 5-4, maybe 6-3, but 5-4. And if he can flip one vote with his speech, I mean, I could see him flipping Alex's vote. And by flipping, I mean that if she has been in the jury house so long with Matt and Raven, where she's, in with the Whistlenut camp of, we can't agree with these idiots over here, I'm going to vote for anybody but Paul because he screwed us over. And I don't know that she's like that, but I'm just going to go with that assumption for a second. If she is in the Josh camp or the anybody but Paul camp, I feel like Paul could win her over. And she could have a moment where, it's her vote. She's by herself in front of the jury box. And she says, all right, Paul, you got me. There's a moment where you could grab her. And if he doesn't grab her, I feel like he's going to end up with the same result from last season, but which, by the way, I would so LOL over.
I think that's right. I think that's a good point. I think you're right there. I think that because, from at least from my analysis, I do think it's going to be 5-4. And I could also see it be the opposite way, where Alex comes into that final two situation planning on voting for Paul, and then I could see him turning her off from it. If he's not careful enough with the final two speech. I do think it is, juries are very rarely live, and I do think that this jury is going to come in with a predetermined idea of what they're going to do. But I can see it flipping one vote, and that one vote is potentially all that matters.
Let me ask this. Do we think that Paul could unintentionally flip Matt and Raven against him? And I say this because if a question comes up in the jury questioning about who was your true final three, and he has to answer, or Josh answers for him and he agrees that it was him and Christmas, then Matt and Raven's delusions about running the game and being in an alliance with Paul all come crashing down, and they realize that what everybody was saying to them in the jury house was really true, that they weren't running the game, that Paul didn't care about them, that Paul wasn't in a final three with them, and that they're just talking out of their ass? Do we ever think that that's a possibility?
No, they're so far up Paul's butt at this point.
All right.
I really don't think. And if they believe into their own like deluded narrative of what they think is happening, I think something like that, it's not going to be enough of a slap in the face. Because I kind of see this, like I like this idea of if Alex is going to vote for not Paul, and Paul has an opportunity to pull her back, it's kind of like an ex-lover that you've scorned and you're trying to like appeal to bring this person back. The appeal has to be emotional, right? And this just goes back to the argument of like how his speech needs to move away from facts and move into emotion. If this is going to be a possibility to pull someone back, it has to come from a place of, look, I know I screwed you over, but I care about you so much, blah, 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 whatever, like you say, to get an ex-lover back. That's like the kind of stuff he needs to go with.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly think if he did somehow manage to flip Matt and Raven, that honestly might flip the entire jury in his favor. But I think what will happen is like they'll ask the question, like, were you really loyal to us? And he'll be like, no, sorry, I really wasn't. You really weren't running the game. And they'll be like, okay, Paul, we got it. We know what you're doing.
Wink, wink.
All right, so let's run through all of the jury members and let's figure out like who we think they're going to vote for. Another piece of information, Brent, you've alluded to this, is that we got a leak. A supposed leak from Hamster Watch. If you, for whatever reason, don't want to hear this leak, we're going to be talking about it a lot because it's pretty important. So, sorry. Theoretically, you can tune out now and listen later. But really, we don't even know if this is true.
Right.
So
we don't even know if it's true.
It's really a lot of speculation here. But basically, Hamster Watch said that the same person that told her that Paul was going to be on the show pre-season, she was the one that broke that story, has told her that during the roundtable, the jurors were incredibly bitter and only Matt and Raven plan on voting for Paul no matter who he's up against. So
wow.
that is that, and again, I've talked about this on the morning updates. I personally believe this. I have no reason to believe this might be false or made up. I think that this is probably true information, even though it runs completely counter to my current analysis of how I think these jurors will vote. So that creates kind of an interesting dichotomy when we're trying to figure out what they're going to do. But we'll try to figure it out as we go along. Liana, did you have any thoughts about this news?
Yeah, well, we had been talking about this for a while before this leak came out, because there was the jury segment that we had gotten where it seemed that, Mark was talking about, oh, Paul's going to get second. But we were like, oh, that could be an edited thing. The show, we know as live feeders, we know what the live feeds look like and we know what's presented on the show. So why wouldn't they just do that during the roundtable and present something to look very different? So we had that, but then Allison Grodner had started talking about a bitter jury, and then this leak comes out. And so we're starting to put together more and more of these pieces that I can actually believe that this is true.
And I actually don't remember which came out first. Was the Allison Grodner comment about the bitter jury and the fact that Maven was creating such a ruckus in the jury house, did that come out first and then Hamster Watch? Or was it Hamster Watch and then Allison Grodner? Because that actually makes a difference to me.
I think Grodner was first.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think so too.
All right, cool. All right.
Yes. So let's get into this. We'll go juror by juror here, and we'll talk about each potential scenario. We'll start with Cody. Cody comes. He left the game saying that he was willing to vote for Paul. Then he gets to the jury house. I'm certain that Mark came back telling him that Paul was talking smack about him still, even though he was gone from the house. That probably didn't help Paul's case. However, Cody has never been a fan of Josh. He hates betas. He's seen Paul as an alpha. You would assume that he would want to award the game to an alpha. I think he may also see Christmas as an alpha. So in many ways, I honestly feel like it seems least likely that he'd give it to Josh of the three of them. But there's obviously, again, with the leak, you never know. So Brent, how do you feel about Cody and where he stands with the vote?
I'm very torn about Cody because I do feel like left to his own devices that he would want to vote for Paul because Paul was the one that got him out of the game. You always want to give it to the guy that gotcha. And, Paul was definitely it for Cody. He was definitely his white whale. But on the other hand, I feel like that, you know, the way the jury is right now, if we're to believe this rumor, then Cody is predisposed to vote for anybody but Paul. But I also think that there's also a bit of a reflection of that as well. I don't know if that's the right word, but a dissonance or another part of the story where if everybody all of a sudden decides we're going to be mad at Paul, I can see Cody being like, y'all were idiots for, you know, he gotcha. You might as well vote for him. Like, I can see him wanting to do his own thing and go off on his own thing and say, you know what, I'm going to surprise everybody and I'm going to give Paul my vote. I mean, because he doesn't owe these people anything. So he's not going to do what everybody else is going to do. So I do feel like that even if we go with the assumption that Alex and Paul, and Kevin, who I thought were sure Paul votes, if they all of a sudden are not Paul votes, one of the people that Paul could get back is, believe it or not, Cody.
Which is baffling to think. But Cody has been this person who has always been, like you said, about respecting the alpha. And I think he just really, really does not like Josh. And I'm just trying to think. Cody paints himself Cody thinks he's like, I'm not an emotional guy. He is. He's very emotional, actually. He likes to think that like, oh, I don't care, whatever. I'm just anti-authority. I think he does care, and I think he hates Josh. And I think he's going to respect Paul for what Paul has done. And even since he's so anti-authority or anti-like groupthink, I think if the jury is starting to turn against Paul, I could absolutely see Cody, because he's so anti-authority or anti-groupthink, going against them. And then on top of it, the fact he hates Josh and the fact that he wants to give it to an alpha. I think all of that adds up that makes me lean towards him voting Paul.
Here's my thing. So I hear what you guys are saying, and I 100% agree with the points made. However, I kind of liken Cody to a wild card, because if you are an alpha, what is the most alpha thing you can do is take control and make sure the one person you don't want to win doesn't win. In my head, the way I kind of picture it is votes are getting announced, Paul loses, Cody kind of side-eyes Paul and says, see, you shouldn't have done that to me. And I feel like that's a little bit of me thinks that Cody might be thinking that way, where like he was the first juror in, jury foreman, I control the destiny of this whole shebang, and I don't want Paul to win. I will make this decision. I will make sure he is not the alpha of the season. I'll make sure he is not the winner of the season. However, I agree with you guys as well. I think the stuff with Josh, the entire season, he's called him a beta from like pretty much week one, and the slandering that went on, the fights that went on, Josh v. Jessica, Josh v. him, that stuff is still in the back of my head, and I still fully think that that's a thing that's gonna be factored in. But also, as was alluded earlier, gone back and also told him, you left, all this stuff was still being said, they still think this way about you. And I don't think Mark would have been the only one. I feel like this has still been going on as early as like 2 weeks ago. I can remember like Paul talking negatively about Cody. Hell, with the final three, he's been talking. So it's been coming up often enough that you're there with all these people. You guys have been together out of the game for long enough. You must have had at least 1 or 2 conversations where someone's like feeling sympathetic towards you, or is like having like a close conversation with you and ends up telling you. So yeah, Paul also said this. Paul also said this. So that also, for me, that's what kind of fuels that fire of, oh, this guy thinks he can do all this and still win. Not on my watch.
Okay. The one thing that I realized that I didn't talk about is Cody with Josh. Obviously everything I said was Cody insofar as, whether he's going to vote for Paul or against Paul. But let's examine the possibility of whether or not Cody can vote for Josh, because I hear that coming through in what you guys are saying, that, Cody hates Josh and he can't stand him, calls him a beta. I agree with all that. However, I do really feel like he could vote for Josh, and here's the reason why. Because Josh actually had an okay relationship, and comparatively to the rest of the house guests, with Cody there at the end. He actually had a few conversations with him. He was respectful of him. He didn't annoy him too much, and I feel like Cody sort of grudgingly learned to, if not respect Josh, then at least acknowledge that, okay, I get him. You know what I mean? Like, I get what Josh is. He's a beta. He's a mama's boy. He's a crier. But you know what? I get it now. And I feel like if he gets it with Josh, then I feel like he could give him his vote. I know that seems like a big stretch, but I do feel like it's very much what I said at the beginning of week one when Josh, I'm just giving myself some credit now. When Josh got the golden apple, people were like, oh, his game's done. I'm like, he could win this season. Y'all watch. He's going to be a joker, but he's going to be their joker. And even though I don't feel like Cody has that mentality, I do feel like Cody would be willing to vote for Josh, because he's like, well, he's an idiot, but at least he's one of ours, you know?
I think Raven was the one with the Joker makeup, though. So
That's true.
well, but the thing is like, yeah, we're saying that, oh, you know, Cody doesn't respect Josh. Like, I literally just said this. But that was him weeks ago. He's been in the jury house now for a while. Who knows how opinions and feelings could have changed throughout the course, you know, of since Cody was evicted way back when. So we, you know, I'm making an assumption based on information that I learned weeks ago. It might not still be the case.
Yeah, I mean, basically, how I see it is like, honestly, if I'm looking at this based on what I've seen, based on how I like interpret Cody's personality, what I've seen from him both in the jury house and in the actual Big Brother house, I'm gonna say I think that Cody votes for Paul over Josh. I think that Cody votes for Christmas over Josh, but all of the other information, like Mark saying that he's going to get second place, which is supposed to be inferring about Paul, which implies that Cody is with him to not vote for Paul. The leak is saying that that potentially Cody is not voting for Paul, and obviously Grodner saying it's a very bitter jury. That's saying everything anti to my own analysis, but I have to just stick. Again, what I'm saying is I have to stick to my guns and just say, like, based on how I am analyzing this, I think Cody votes for Paul. But again, I do believe the leak, so maybe something happened. If it did, I don't know how to explain it.
Okay, so your final answer is, because I'm writing this down.
I was going to write it down. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Good. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm going to say he votes for Paul over Josh, and he votes for Christmas over Josh. Brent, what do you think?
I say that Cody votes for Josh over Paul, and I think he votes for Christmas over Josh.
Liana?
Yeah, I think it's Christmas over Josh for sure, and I think it's Paul. I think he still ends up voting for Paul.
Okay.
Puya, what do you think?
I think at the end of the day, Paul over Josh, but Josh over Christmas, because with that math, he would have eliminated Paul. So that gets him the vote.
Okay.
All right. So let's move on to Elena, and we'll try to figure out what Elena might be thinking. When I saw Elena in the jury house, I saw a lot of smirks when she was like essentially laughing at how Paul had played these people. That says to me that she's enjoying watching Paul do his thing. But again, you never know. Maybe she is still bitter, but it doesn't really speak to a bitterness toward Paul. We did see a lot of bitterness toward Raven and Matt, though, and that may speak to the idea that Raven and Matt are the Paul killers in the jury. She certainly seemed like she was willing to vote for Paul when she was on the outs of the Big Brother 19 house, and she never really had a whole lot of respect for Josh either. So it's also a little bit difficult to figure out
who had a lot of respect for Josh. I feel like
that's why I said either.
Everybody.
Yeah. So like trying to figure out who she may vote for between Christmas and Josh might be a little difficult. So there's a lot of stuff to get into with Elena. Puya, what do you think?
I feel like with Elena, it's a little bit more, it's a little bit more out there for me. I feel like we've seen her reactions towards, she knows Paul's running game. She knows Paul's running shop there. So that one, I feel like it's foregone. If it's Paul and Josh at the end, I have to imagine it might be Paul against Josh. And here's why. I feel like, so there was that 1 week where Josh was very open with Elena about how you picked the blandest guy in the house, screw this guy, you should have gone for me, and all of that, and they were laughing about it. But then you see how their relationship has been since they've been in the jury together, and I feel like that will factor in a little bit. The funny thing is, I feel like the facts or the arguments or the speculation we're doing leads to conventional wisdom saying Paul. But then all this other stuff we're hearing is really bringing me back to, oh my God, then it can't be him. So it's a clash in my head. But I think if it's Josh, she will not. I think she can't. And that's why I said on Sunday when we did the show, where I was like, we haven't heard anything. We've heard bitterness towards Paul. We haven't heard in favor of Josh, in favor of Christmas. So I feel like they might have been hoping for Christmas to be up there. And I mean, Christmas's story is somewhat interesting. Broken leg, makes it all the way to the end. Doesn't win competitions by, proper means. But I feel like I'm rambling a little bit here. But yeah, no, I think it's going to be Paul.
All right.
I think she would go for Paul.
I was going to say really quickly, while we're doing the show, can the chat room go to Google and find out what Alison Grodner had to say about the juries of 15, 16, 17, 18? Anything you can find about that week leading up to the finale. I'm interested to hear her spin on what she said. Like, did she say things about Nicole? Like, if the jurors really don't like Nicole, or, they're really mad at Derek. I mean, like, if she said similar things, then I'm less inclined to believe this. I kind of want to know what she said previously and if she's ever been dogging any of the other possible final two people before they got to the end and trying to throw us off, or has she been generally pretty honest about what she has told us? And I don't know. I kind of don't know what to believe there. As far as Elena's vote, I have her voting for Josh over Paul and Josh over Christmas. I don't know how to explain it. I think they had a weird connection. I think that there is a part of her that sort of respects Josh. I know you said that she doesn't respect Josh. Maybe respect isn't the right word. I think again, it's like Cody. She gets him. I feel like she gets him, and she's not threatened by him. I think Elena's the kind of woman who's used to having, getting what she wants, and she didn't get what she wanted in this game. But I don't feel like she's going to give the guy who screwed her over the money. I feel like she's going to give it to the kid, and Josh is the kid in this example.
See, I don't think that, Elena doesn't really strike me as somebody who is not going to respect someone's good game. I mean, you see her enjoying, how everybody's getting screwed over and watching all their faces and really kind of, reveling in this with what's happening. But I just can't help but go back to Maven. Even on the blocking and the couch and the jury segment that we saw, they've isolated themselves. They were fighting so hard for Paul. And I just, again, people are making these decisions emotionally. And I just can't help but feel if I was in that situation and I had two people telling me to do something and I absolutely hated them, oh my goodness, I'm never going to do what they say. So even though I think Elena would respect the game that Paul has played, I just think that if it ends up being an emotional decision, I think she's going to end up voting Josh over Paul.
Taran, I have to say that I'm so happy that I called this a week and a half ago, where they're so Bobby and Bruno. They really are. They're like Bobby and Bruno times 100.
Yes.
They're so poisonous in the jury to the point where I thought they'd go to jury and they had marching orders from Paul and they knew exactly what to say and what not to reveal to other people. But number one, they haven't done that. They've revealed everything. Okay. But they've also held fast to this belief that they were involved in the intricate strategies of what was really going on in the house and that they were Paul's true ride or dies, when we know that that's not the case. It is amazing to me the effect that these two people who were basically completely and utterly nothing on the season are having on Paul's game.
Yeah, this is the most effect they've had on the season, throughout the entirety of the game.
Oh my God.
All right. When I think about Elena, I definitely see Elena as somebody that would be influenced by Matt and Raven almost more than anyone else. Maybe Mark more than Elena, but I could absolutely see her voting just against Matt and Raven more than voting against Paul. But again, it's really to say that is to, again, sort of believe the speculation, which I do believe, but based on what I've seen myself.
This is such a cluster F right now. I know. I mean, I'm not trying to be mean or anything, but everything is qualified. I can hear Rob listening to this pulling his hair out right now because he's like, well, on one thing you guys are saying this, but then there's this other thing over here. So I feel like we need to pick a narrative and go with it.
That's what happens when there are rumors. We don't want to base our entire analysis on rumors.
Look, I'm waiting for a text from Rob Sesternino right now. I'm just telling you.
Rob's gonna text me and be like, "Why is Brent interrupting you so much? We gotta get rid of him."
Man, I hope Kevin's Thanksgiving dinner isn't like this, or I feel bad for them.
No, but seriously, I think that there's value in determining what's the analysis without the rumors and what's the analysis with the rumors. Because if we base our entire final analysis on a set of rumors that turns out to be false, I think we all look like idiots. So I think it matters, and I think that if I'm looking at this without the leak, then I'm looking at this as Elena probably votes for Paul. That's how I see it, and so that's how I'm going to call it. I think Elena votes for Paul over Josh, and I think that she votes for Josh over Christmas, because I do agree with Brent that she did have somewhat of a relationship with Josh. She did have a relationship with Christmas, but it became strained over the course of the season. And I do think that she would respect Josh, especially if Josh was the one to cut Paul, which he would have to be if he was there with Christmas. So I'm going to say Paul and Josh as the votes here. Puya, what did you say for this?
I was saying Paul Josh, but I think after hearing everyone talk, I'm going Josh.
All right,
Josh.
Liana.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'm gonna go Josh. Also, just because that's fun to say.
And all right, Taran, what did you ultimately say here?
I said Paul Josh.
Paul Josh. Okay, cool.
What did you say, Brent?
I said Josh.
All right. Josh. Putty. All right, so let's move on to Mark, whose vote I believe is going to be tied with Elena's. I think that however Elena votes, Mark is also going to vote. I also think that Elena will be the driving force behind this vote. So I don't think there's a whole lot we need to do in terms of analyzing Mark. I think it's just going to be Elena's reasoning, and he's going to follow along with that. Liana, do you disagree?
No, I don't. I really think that, Mark is this little puppy dog, and I think he feels similarly enough to Elena that whatever she ends up going with, he's going to follow. So in that case, I think that it would be another Josh vote in this case.
Yeah, what do you think?
I think Josh as well. I think we've seen with the jury stuff, the way Maven have gotten under their skin, specifically the way Matt got under Cody's skin, and the way Mark's skin. I feel like those three for me are pretty much like I can see why they'd be Josh, and as of this moment, I'm also Josh.
Brent, you agree?
I do agree. I know one thing though. Mark ain't voting for Christmas.
No, it's not.
That's what I know. I know that.
There you go. So I'm going to stick with what I said for Elena. I do think that based on what I believe, I do think that Mark would vote for Paul. Watch out for Matt and Raven, but I do think that the vote is there for Paul. So let's move on to Matt himself. Probably not a whole lot because I think our analysis plus the leaks, they're both in agreement here that Matt's probably voting for Paul. Do we agree?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Yep.
But this is interesting though. What if Josh ends up cutting Paul and taking Christmas to the end? Brent, how do you feel Matt would vote in that case?
It's so tough. I think that he would have a really tough time because I think they're all expecting Paul to be at the end, and I don't know what he would do. I really don't. If I had to guess, I think that he would probably vote for Josh, but that's just a hunch of mine. I have no idea why, honestly.
Liana, what do you think?
Well, I'm trying to think. Okay, so if they respect Paul's game, then I think they would want to vote for who is Paul's second in command. So who do they think that is? I think they think it's Christmas. I don't think they think it's Josh. I think they think that Josh is the puppet in that circumstance, but Christmas is actually the second in command. So just based on that logic, I think I'm going to go with Christmas.
Yeah, and we also know how Matt feels about people that can't own their own crap. Like, what are you doing, homie? Why can't you just own it?
It's my favorite impression of yours ever.
Yes. So I tend to agree with Liana here. What do you think, Puya?
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. I feel like the facts that Liana put forward and considered, also looking at it as the inverse of what everyone else is feeling, the bitterness towards Maven and their standing of Paul, is voting for Josh because that's who everyone wants to vote for if Paul's at the end with Josh. So I think that it would be Christmas as well.
All right. And do we agree that Raven is going to be exactly the same? We don't have to go over Raven separately?
100%.
Yeah, the less we talk about Raven, the better.
Yes, please.
All right, so let's talk about Jason and where his vote may lie. Obviously, he definitely appeared to be somebody that would never vote for Paul in the final two on his way out of the house. He even seemed very against it when he was in the jury house. When Alex came in, he finally discovered that Alex had not betrayed him, but he was still very much against Paul. But we did see Alex start to argue, hey, but it's just a game. So we saw the start of that, and it obviously could have gone one of two ways. Alex either convinces Jason that he should respect the game and vote for Paul, or Jason convinces Alex that, you know what, we shouldn't have trusted him. You owe me this. We need to not vote for Paul. He really screwed us over. Brent, how do you think it went?
Well, you know what? She didn't sound that convincing. I don't know if you guys remember watching this, but they were arguing with her, and she was like, well, It's a game. But she was sort of grudgingly saying that. I don't even think she necessarily believes that anymore after seeing the pain on some of these people's faces or their annoyance at Matt and Raven. I really do feel like there is a good possibility that Jason said, you know what, woman, I've listened to you all season long and look where it got us. You got to respect my wishes on this. You know what? I'm voting for Paul. And that's all there is to it. I don't think he's going to let Alex decide how he votes. That's what I know. Now, whether or not he ultimately votes for Paul or not will be his own decision. I still think he will not. I have Jason voting for Josh over Paul and Christmas over Josh based on what he said at the end of his little thing where he was like, it'd be funny if the girl with the broken leg won Big Brother. I mean, Jason isn't a fan of Big Brother. I can actually see him doing something crazy like that. So, but given the most likely scenario of Josh and Paul in the final two, I think he votes for Josh over Paul. I don't think he's going to give Paul his vote.
So you really don't think that Alex is going to influence his decision?
I know. I hear what you're saying because I can hear inferred in the question is the fact that we've seen all season long.
Yeah, the subtext. Brent, really?
Right. I know what you're saying. We've seen all season long where she controlled everything, but look what happened to them. And Jason is so annoyed by the fact that, and she's having to say to him, dude, I was wrong. I screwed you over. And he even saw on the tape that she apologized to Holly for screwing over Jason's game. Do you really think that he's just going to abdicate responsibility for this vote to Alex again? I cannot believe that.
I like how Liana was like, are you sure that's what you're saying? Whereas like the Brent approach would have been like, bitch, you think that Alex isn't gonna convince Jason to vote however she wants him to? Get out of here.
Liana is very Arissa Cox. That was very, are you sure?
You can and you will.
So Liana, what are your thoughts with Jason?
No, I mean, originally coming into this, I was thinking, Alex and Jason are a for sure pair. And I think that their votes are going to go together. But I think it could go along the lines of what Brent is saying. If, they kind of come into the jury house and have this epiphany of like, look how screwed over we got. Look how bad these decisions were. And if, again, they feel hurt, I think that that's absolutely going to dictate their vote. And I see, this is another situation, Taran, like we were saying, if we take the leak into account versus not, I think if we take the leak into account, I can definitely see Alex and Jason being two people who would not vote for Paul and who would be bitter and would be willing to give it up to the next person that comes up against him. But on the other hand, if they do ultimately end up respecting, get like game respects game, right? If that's the way they end up going, I could see that. But I still think ultimately, I think they're going to vote for Josh. I really think they're going to. I think the two of them are going to vote as a pair, and I think they're going to vote for Josh over Paul.
What about Josh versus Christmas?
I could see. I could see Christmas. I think for this like similar logic to what I outlined for like respecting someone's game and seeing her as the second in command. I think that that's the case. I really think they're going to vote for that doesn't even make sense. Okay.
See, I'm glad the whole I'm glad Josh versus Christmas is very unlikely to happen because I really don't know what would happen in that scenario. I wanted to bring up something really quickly to you, Liana. Do you think that there's also a possibility that Whistle has a newborn baby on the way? He already has one kid and a wife that he adores. I can see him wanting to vote for the family guy. And the family guy in this instance is Josh. Josh is big on my familia, and I have on my mom and my sisters and my brothers. And that, I can see him wanting to vote for somebody like that over some, tattoo wearing asshole who screwed them all over in the game. And, really, they don't know much about Paul. Paul's kept everything pretty close to the vest. I just feel like that may also be a part of the story.
I could absolutely see that play a part of the story. And the fact that if Paul is going to go with this very facts-oriented speech versus appealing to their, their emotion, I think that could just further push Jason away, from Paul and put him in more likely to vote for Josh. Okay, come back to me. I still say Josh over Paul, but okay, I gotta.
Let's also not forget that Jason broke Christmas's foot, and I do think that may play a role regarding his jury vote when it's Christmas versus Josh. But Puya, what do you think?
All right, so the way I see it, I have to say right off the bat, it's very funny because, and And then Jason and Alex were both with Paul, but both ended up feeling a completely different way about Paul coming out of the house. Maven, their reaction is exactly what Paul thought he was going to have with everybody. And then Jason and Alex are the two that feel really burnt. I keep going back to the fact that Alex kept spewing that Paul's all about friendship. His season, the theme was friendship with him. We can trust him. And isn't easy to wipe off once you realize you've been an idiot for 45 days and you've been spewing this stuff nonstop. And then factor in the with Jason that at first he thought for sure Alex and Paul were counterfeits. Alex and Paul burned him. Then when he finds out that Alex apologized to his wife for what happened, won the HOH, and looks up in the sky and says, "This is for you, Jason." Now he not only is he feeling burned by Paul specifically, but now he's annoyed because Paul made him think that Alex was like this. Paul made him think these things, and Paul caused him to say some bad things about Alex, which he clearly regretted. And we saw like 13 different confessionals that night from jury with him. I think they're going to sit down, and even if Alex is like, well, he kind of won, like he played the best game. He's a counterfeit. You said friendship. It's not a thing. I don't buy it. So as far as Josh v Paul goes, I think it's very clear it's going to be Josh. And I really like the points Brent made about the Familia. I think that is something to factor in. And then I completely forgot that Jason broke Christmas's foot. So for the other bracket, I was like, damn, maybe the sympathy vote happens. Zingbot zinged him about it. So that is a possibility as well. So I would say I would go with Josh and then Christmas for the Christmas versus Josh.
Yeah, I agree with that. I do think that Jason is the person more than anyone else on the jury that is most likely to vote for Josh, and that's going to be reflected in the fact that we are all completely agreeing that that Jason votes for Josh over Paul. However, I also agree with Puya that I do think that that Christmas will probably get his vote over Josh when it comes to the final two. Not only did he say it, as Brent mentioned in his exit interview, that he wants Christmas to win. But the fact that he broke her foot, he never had like that good of a relationship with Josh, whereas he did have a halfway decent relationship with Christmas along the way. So I do think that vote goes to Christmas. Liana, have you decided?
Yeah, I've thought about it. I'm definitely going Josh for Josh Paul. And then I do think it's going to end up being Christmas. I just remember how bad he felt when he broke her leg. I mean, he didn't want to like deal with her at all. Like that's how badly he felt. But I feel like if Christmas is standing up there, I think he's really going to feel like he needs to give her the money because of what he did. And I think that that's going to play a huge role. And I think he would vote for Christmas.
Yes, the chat is getting angsty here. They're saying there's 1,000 people watching this right now, and only 50 of them are on robhasawebsite.com chatting away in the chat room. They want more people, so make sure you join them in the chat. So let's move on to Alex. How do we think Alex is going to vote here? Because obviously, Paul prepared her a lot in the house. She left that house saying she was voting for Paul. She went to that jury segment saying she was voting for Paul. However, there is, I think, a lot of reason to expect that maybe that vote could potentially flip. And that's not even regarding the leaks. I think the fact that Paul continued to lie to her in her exit interview or in his goodbye messages. I think the fact that she is very bitter about it and she's just like barely containing that container of rage, the Tupperware of rage. And so I really do think that this could be one that's really up in the air. And then when it comes to Christmas and Josh, I have no idea. Puya, what do you think?
I think Alex would rather die than to be in the Maven camp, especially if Jason has been speaking to her and like they've had conversations. And again, I feel like Alex has the most reason to feel burnt and humiliated because she is the one that's been singing the friendship song the longest. So while she might be thinking best game, I think she's more of a follower and not a leader. And I don't think she's going to be the voice for Paul once she's come to the realization that friendship was not a thing with him. I was never his go-to. He had the veto and could have pulled her off, didn't. the 1-1 may have, like, the tie vote may have happened, but she knows that he did that for, like, plausible deniability of sorts. Like, she's not going to respect that. I don't think so. And I think after speaking with Jason, after seeing the reactions of the jury, after seeing Maven, like, really try and pull for Paul, I think all those factors considered, she can't. She would maybe want to. Maybe she knows it's the right decision. She knows he's been the best player, but I don't think she's going to get herself to do it. I don't think she's capable of it.
Well, and I think also coupled with the fact that if you think of this game sort of like a cult, where she was in the cult and then gets plucked out of it and is now back in the real world with quasi-sane people, I think that she's going to be convinced by them. And I think that she is, friendship's dead. Like, she can't vote for something that's dead, right? So she would have to go against Paul and not vote for him in the end.
Yeah, this is the tougher one for me, because I feel like Kevin, I can see Kevin flipping his vote to Josh relatively easily. Alex is the one where I watched her after Paul gave her the bad news, and there were moments where you could see her rage building up, but she never, ever really called Paul to the carpet. I mean, she did say a couple things like, well, if you talk to me any longer, I'm going to say some mean things to you. And then Paul was really hurt by that. She never really went after him like she did Kevin or anybody else in the house or Cody. So I was really bummed about that. And then she even started helping him devise who to take to the final two and said, you'll certainly win versus Josh. That's who you should take to the final two. So I have a hard time believing that she would then turn around and vote against him. However, if she's lived with these people long enough, and she's going to be there for what, a week and a half, 2 weeks, where she's in the jury house listening to them, and Matt and Raven are completely horrible. Wow, I'm like Liana. This is my the one I don't know. I'm going to say that Alex is going to clearly vote for Christmas over Josh. That's easier for me, but I don't know what to do about Josh versus Paul. I'm gonna go with my heart of hearts, and I think that she's going to be drinking the Kool-Aid till the very end. So I think her and Jason are actually going to split. I think that Alex is going to vote for Paul. I think this is probably the one jury vote that they probably got wrong when they were talking about who was all voting for Paul and who wasn't. I could see, and here's the other thing. I could also see Alex as somebody who was very hesitantly in the anti-Paul camp, and then on finale night with all the people watching and talking about the game and how you got played, she just walks up to the key box and quietly slips in a vote for Paul. I can also see that happening. So I'm going Alex votes for Paul over Josh and Christmas over Josh.
Yeah, I think it's a good point to remember her talks with Paul when she was basically telling him, you should take Josh to the end. Nobody respects him. He will not get a single vote. It's hard to imagine that she then is like, after giving that advice, like, I'm going to vote for anyone but Paul, which means probably Josh, because he's the one I respect the least. It's hard to sort of wrap your head around that as to why she might change. Again, maybe it's the Matt and Raven thing, but it's hard to speculate that because we haven't seen it play out. We don't know how that may have hit her. So I tend to agree. I'm going to say that Alex, she votes for Paul. And I do, I said I had no idea who she'd vote for between Christmas and Josh, but of course I do. I don't know why I said that. She said it. Nobody will vote for Josh. She thinks that Christmas could potentially beat Paul. So I think that she votes for Christmas over Paul.
Can I just talk about something really quick before we get to Kevin? Oh, actually, let's do Kevin, and then let's talk about something else. I'm sorry.
Can I just get a quick refresher, Liana? Who were your choices here?
Okay, I think she votes for Josh over Paul, but only because she pulls a topaz and votes for the wrong person.
I was going to say that.
Great minds. And then, she's going to vote for Christmas.
Pooya.
I second that. Absolutely. Hands down.
All right. For the record keeping, can I count at least one of those as Paul so that we're not split?
Do it.
Yeah.
All right.
I have to say too, really quickly, I know Big Brother Canada dealt with that, and they had to go to the producers and they had to talk about it behind the scenes after Topaz pulled that during season 1. But this is a live show on Wednesday night. So can you imagine if we've gone 19 seasons and it took 1 season for it to happen on Big Brother Canada, but it's not happened in 19 seasons. Oh my gosh, that would be rich. If it's a live show and Julie's doing the keys and then someone's behind her going, no. What? Yeah, I Taran. Wow.
Dr. Will is going to be there. Rob is going to be there.
Out who's doing the roundtable yet, because I'm all about it.
I'm pretty sure it's Dr. Will.
So he was lying when he tweeted that he wasn't doing the roundtable.
Yeah, I'm reasonably certain that is the case.
Okay, cool. He was playing us.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Unless I'm wrong here. Pretty sure. Yes, we did get the news that Jeff, the Big Jeff, he's been replaced. He left the show. Obviously, he hasn't been doing these X interviews. He's been replaced by Dr. Will. Dr. Will is going to be doing the exit interviews in the backyard along with Rob Sestrin. Not in the same video stream, of course, but Rob will be there as well. And it's like, man, did you have this option the whole time? Like, what have you been waiting for? This seems like a no-brainer.
I will say that the iPad was then an improvement over Big Jeff, but I do think that Dr. Will is an improvement over the iPad.
High praise.
Yes,
no, I'm so excited. This is going to be great. Although it is interesting, the fact that he's going to be doing the questions and he did the roundtable. So that made me question, like, maybe he didn't do the roundtable, but I still believe he's probably doing both.
I don't know how I feel about this. I want to see if the chat agrees with me on this. I kind of prefer my Dr. Will in small doses because I like him being snarky on Twitter and then deleting Twitter messages really quickly. And then occasionally, once every year going to the jury roundtable and, throwing a little smack around and, quietly walking off the set, where we don't see him again. But now he's going to be in the backyard where we can actually touch him. I thought he was all circuitry and wires or something, wasn't he? Isn't that what he always said? He's real now.
Yeah, it is a little weird. It is a little weird to be he's doing Jeff's job. That seems like he should be above that.
Right.
It is a job for an iPad.
David in the chat says, I was just on American Ninja Warrior. There you go. I guess I did show up.
Yay. Never mind. Sorry. I was going to ask you about the fire, but this is not the time.
The fire, man. I'll tell you about the fire.
Okay.
It was hot. No, I'm just kidding. It was hot, but Anyway, moving forward, let's talk about
thermodynamics lessons with Taran. This is exciting.
Lita, she could not take the heat. She was very much complaining about the fact that we were near the fire. So let's talk about Kevin's vote here. Again, he was somebody that was saying, for sure, I'm voting for you, Paul. Kevin also said he had no respect for Josh. Remember, Kevin got in that fight with Josh. I do think there was potentially a little bit of shifting in his exit interviews. I mean, he did say he was basically rooting for Paul, but he was saying he was rooting for all three of them. Maybe that was just him trying to be diplomatic. But I do think that potentially the fact that Josh opened up about the final three deal that he had with Paul and Christmas opened Kevin up to the idea of maybe I'll vote for any one of them if they've all played the game that well. But despite that, it really seems like Kevin is a pretty sure lock for Paul, right, Liana?
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. I mean, I think Kevin saying those things about all three of them is just, he's such a classy guy. And I don't think that he would, ever besmirch anyone when he comes out of his exit interview. I mean, the man's wearing a suit. Come on. So I really think that he's going to stand by it. Paul is his boy. As much as he hates Matt, which he hates Matt, he's one of the ones that I don't see necessarily being influenced if this rumor is true. And Maven is just being complete obnoxious, jerks about this whole Paul thing. I still think that Kevin ends up voting for Paul.
But what happens when it's Christmas versus Josh? Do we think that, obviously, again, he talked about not respecting Paul or Josh, not really liking Josh. He's obviously liked Christmas for a long period of time, unaware of the comments that Christmas has made toward him that never, ended up being something that he was confronted with. Do we think that he's going to vote for Christmas over Josh?
Yeah, absolutely. I think he votes for Christmas. I think he's had a really good relationship with Christmas from his side the entire game. Even though she started ignoring him and saying really awful things about him, those were all behind his back. Those were all up in the HOH room when Kevin wasn't there. She was still really nice to Kevin's, to his face. So I think that Kevin ends up voting for Christmas over Josh.
All right, Puya, what do you think?
Yeah, I think Brent has made this argument before where it was behind his back, so it doesn't count. And I have to agree, there are no receipts for him to refer to with all this, with anything Christmas has said. So I think, and Christmas made him breakfast and he loves that kind of thing. So we'll go back and look at that as well. No, ultimately, I think the votes are where they are with Kevin. I've said this before. Kevin with his DRs, I feel like the one thing I noticed with him recurring every time is, let's see, we'll see, let's see, we'll see. So I feel like he probably carried that on in the jury and didn't really show his cards. But I think ultimately it'll be Paul, if it's Paul and Josh, and then Christmas, if it's Christmas and Josh. With Josh not really getting any of the votes. At the end of the day, Kevin's a classy guy, and he's watched Josh have all these arguments. I do agree that, you know, Josh being honest about the alliance.
Yeah.
You're a robot.
Yes. Can we have you bounce out and come back in? And in the meantime, Brent, let me know what your thoughts are here.
Well, the one, like I said when I was talking about Alex, I feel like Kevin more than anything is easier for me to predict. No tea, no shade against Kevin, but he is a bit of a follower. Okay. And he likes to feel good. And I think he's very susceptible to peer pressure. I'm sorry. I feel like he is. And I feel like going to the jury house, he might be predisposed to vote for his boy, Paul. However, upon getting to the jury house, I can see him totally falling in with this crowd of people. Like, look, here's the thing. He doesn't even like Matt, number one. There are these two idiots over here who are just poisoning the jury. And then there's all these other people over here who he pretty much had a good relationship with, except for Alex. And even then, he sort of liked Alex and she hated him. If he likes all of these people and he's really good friends with Whistle, and Whistle is so hurt and is the most anti-Paul, I can easily see Kevin flipping his vote and voting against Paul and voting for Josh. I think that Kevin votes for Josh over Paul, and I think he votes for Christmas over Josh, point blank, and the period.
Okay, but here's the thing, Brent. He's the fourth to last juror, or second to last juror, I guess. So he's going to come into the roundtable, and then if what Andy says is right, then they all get sequestered right after that. So essentially, that peer pressure would have to have effect just over the roundtable.
Well, Andy said it lasted like 2.5 hours. I mean, you know, I feel like that's enough time for Kevin to get the message, and then they're going to obviously talk a little bit. I don't know how it works with the blocking as far as, you know, when are they all together right before the show? I honestly don't remember. Maybe the chat room can remind me. Are they all together right before the show and then they come out one by one, or are they kept separately? I mean, basically what I want to know is how much time do they have to talk on finale day? That's what I want to know. And I don't know. We'll see. But I'm going with my gut on this one. I think Kevin's a total follower, and I mean that in the best possible way. He likes to make people happy. He wants to make people happy. And his boy Whistle is hurt, and most of the jury doesn't want to vote for Paul. I think that Kevin is a follower and votes for Josh over Paul. And that's just how it's going to be.
All right. Puya, did you have a thought that you wanted to finish about this?
You guys hear me fine now, or am I still part of your army? All right. Lovely. Yeah, no, I come back in and I'm hearing Brent make a lot of sense.
What?
And I
must have misspoke.
I almost wanted to jump in onto the Brent camp, but I would have to say I still think it's going to be Paul v. Josh, and then Christmas v. Josh.
All right. Yes, I do agree. I think that Brent makes a good point here. I think that given enough time,
repeat that. Hold on. Let me record that. Hold on.
I think given enough time, I do think that Jason could convert him over, but I don't think that the length of the roundtable is enough. And here's why. I think that Kevin still feels kind of betrayed by Jason. He talked about, like, Jason turned his back on me. He was willing to let me go. I don't think there's enough time for Kevin to both get over that and come on to Jason's side in terms of I'm going to be super anti-Paul now, especially when it comes to Josh. There's a lot of stuff that has to be overcome in such a short period of time. I think it's theoretically possible, but I don't think it's likely. So I'm going to say that that Kevin also votes for Paul over Josh, and I do think it's an easy one here, Christmas over Josh as well. So that leaves us with one more juror, and we don't know who this is going to be, so we're going to have to talk about two different people here. I think we can all agree that Josh is in the final two regardless. That's been the situation that we've been talking about. So if Christmas is the one that ends up in the jury, how do we think Christmas will vote Josh versus Paul? Brent, Puya, we'll start with you. I see Brent looking down at his phone.
I'm writing down what I'm going to say already.
Oh, okay. Well, go ahead if you want.
No, he's setting the Brent was right as his like ringtone.
All right, Puya, what do you think?
So I think Christmas is going to be in a purgatory of emotion. It's going to come down, for me, I think she's going to vote for Josh. I feel like everything leads to her wanting to vote for Josh. They've been together from the start. But then
Liana had a huge reaction to that.
Sorry, what?
She's become that.
Oh no! What?
Listen, I'm just trying to talk to her, guys. Let me explain. Let me explain. Okay.
No.
So,
no.
Fine, I'm cut off. Liana, take over.
No. How is it not Paul? She's in love with Paul. How is it not Paul? I'm sorry. Like I don't know. Just no.
All right, Puya, explain yourself. What you think? You think it's Josh?
Not anymore. I'm terrified to justify it now.
Oh no! I turned him into a robot.
You're roboting again, honey.
You've destroyed your microphone.
Okay, I Puya, bounce out, come back in. I will explain the Josh. Oh, because I understand what you're saying. Okay, here's the thing. First of all, I will say personally that I think the Christmas votes for Paul over Josh if she is the 9th juror, and it says here that she's almost definitely going to be the 9th juror. However, I can see where Puya's coming from. Because of this, the only way that I think that Christmas could vote for Josh is for exactly what I think is going to happen. For Josh to pull a very, my familia, I love you guys. It's been a great summer. I played my heart on this game. This has been my life's dream, all of that. Please, and I could really use the money. I need the money. My family needs the money. I feel like there's a part of Christmas that really connected with Josh, and I can see her voting for him in that instance. However, I do agree with the majority of the panel here, at least Liana, and I definitely feel like Christmas is definitely going to vote for Paul over Josh. But I understand where you're coming from on that, Puya. But go ahead. Did you hear what I said? I just feel like that if there's enough of Josh as a human being to his speech, I feel like that Christmas could vote for him.
Yeah, I feel like I'm underestimating the power of being dickmatized.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's where my flaw is coming in with this argument. And like the thing with Christmas is it's kind of up in the air. I feel like emotions will play in somewhat. I feel like if there's emotions involved, somewhat. But I think I might have to just follow my sword here and agree with you guys and say probably going to be Paul. Probably going to be Paul.
Yeah, I'm really hoping that this was I voted for the wrong person type thing, because I'd really still like to be friends with you after this.
Forgive me.
Fair to say, Liana, you think it's Paul as well?
Yeah, absolutely. She's in love with him. You do stupid things when you're in love, and she's going to throw her game away for him, and she's going to vote for him in the end.
Well, how's this for an alternate theory? She does have feelings for Paul here. And we know what Paul's speech is going to be. If Paul gets really caught up about how disloyal he was in the house and has to admit that he wasn't loyal to Christmas, that he wasn't loyal to Josh. Meanwhile, Josh is preaching loyalty. We know Christmas is all about the team. Do we think that may turn Christmas off at the last second, and she, like a spurned lover, ends up voting for Josh instead?
No.
Silence.
The only thing that I think could sway Christmas is if the audience is very Big Brother Canada and they're very anti-Paul and they're very pro-Josh. That is the one thing, but I don't think that's going to happen on Big Brother US. I feel like the audience is pretty small and they're just going to politely applaud, and they've all been carefully selected anyway, and half of them are like returning Big Brother players or winners or whatever. So that it's not going to be the big house of people like it is on Big Brother Canada. I feel like that's the only real way, besides what I said previously, that she would vote for Josh over Paul. I agree that she's gonna vote for Paul.
Yeah, yes. I mean, Paul may screw up his final speech, but it's not going to be enough to sway Christmas. It's just not. Like, she's voting for him hands down.
Yes, I agree. I do think it's Paul here. So let's move forward to how Paul may vote if he is in the jury. And it's Christmas versus Josh. I think this is a slam dunk. I think Paul goes Christmas, especially if Josh is the one to cut him. I think it's Christmas out of bitterness alone.
Yeah.
Vanessa Rousseau.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was going to say. I think that, even though Josh, because he was the one who cut him, I still don't think that Paul's going to fall into the camp of, oh, okay, well, since you beat me, I'm going to vote for you because maybe that makes me look better. He's just going to be completely bitter. And I think he's absolutely going to vote for Christmas.
I 100% agree. Paul does not like it when he does not get his way. He stomps around. He just rants to people. He won't stop talking. Oh my God, I'm describing myself right now. But seriously, I do feel like that he's definitely going to vote for Christmas. And now that we've gotten to the end of this, or Taran, have you told us what you thought was going to going to happen?
Yeah, you agree too. This is Paul votes Christmas.
CC, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. This is what I wanted to ask. When we saw about 4 days ago, our hearts sank. And I remember listening to the Saturday update with you, Liana and Taran, where you were like, oh, no. And you were like, and Josh is talking about taking Paul to the final two. He thinks that that's his better chance. I mean, based on what I'm seeing, I'm thinking that he had it right before we did. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, looking at this, it looks as though Christmas pretty handily beats Josh, according to our predictions. However, it is a bit closer. If it's Paul versus Josh, it looks like there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So there's 6. It's 6-3. Paul versus Josh, and I think it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's also 6-2. No, it's 7-2 the other way. So by one vote, we have predicted that he stands a better chance against Paul. Liana, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, well, I think at that moment I had possibly incorrectly assumed that we weren't going to have a jury that was going to vote based on, being betrayed and being bitter. I thought that they were going to, game respects game, and they were going to vote for Paul. Seeing them being so, kind of elated at how Paul has played all these people, I thought that was going to reflect then in Paul getting the votes coming to the end. But it does seem that, and again, this is taking the leak into account, so I don't know, but the cards, things are starting to add up. We're having more and more pieces of evidence to suggest that, yes, people are feeling burned by Paul, and then that's going to reflect in the votes. So Christmas, the girl who was crippled, who said so many mean things about people, but she did it behind their backs. And so they feel bad for her, and they feel better about her, and they feel angry at Paul. And so it does seem that Josh taking Paul to the end is the better decision. Like, I'll eat crow. I'll admit that this seems to be a better outcome for him.
Well, I mean, I'll join you in that. I'll eat crow as well. I mean, when I first saw this, I was like, this is why we can't have nice things. This is terrible. What happened? Where did your common sense go, Josh? I mean, because he was talking all of, like, the last 2 weeks about getting Paul out, that Paul was his biggest competition. I think inadvertently here, he may have stumbled onto the right idea, but not necessarily for the right reasons, Taran.
Yeah, and that's what I definitely agree. I mean, when he is analyzing the jury, he sees it entirely wrong.
I know,
he thinks that he has Raven and Matt.
Yeah.
And if he did have Raven and Matt, basically if he wins, it's probably because of Raven and Matt. And so if he did have Raven and Matt, that would mean that he loses. Yes, this is definitely, I mean, it would go along with the theme of the season, right move, wrong reasons. It's you get there, right, Puya?
Yeah, no, I got to co-sign everything you guys have said. I couldn't believe it when I first saw it, and now looking at it, it's like, yep, you fell ass backwards into 500 grand by making the wrong move, but the right move. But I think it was the wrong move, but it's definitely the right move. So it's one of those things. He's definitely got the right call here, as it seems.
But there is something else to consider here, and just because we have Paul beating him by less votes than Christmas doesn't mean that it's a better decision to take Paul necessarily. Because if we look at those votes, he's still technically losing at this point. Who do we think he has the most chance to swing votes over from? Because when I do look at him versus Christmas, I think there's a lot of ways that the jury might be live in that scenario because they expected Paul to be at the final two. And if Christmas talks about team, if Josh points out this idiot was going to take Paul, I made the big move, I took Paul out, I could see Christmas losing votes. I could see Josh picking votes up a lot more easily than he could versus Paul, where I think they're a lot more locked in. Brent, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I can't necessarily point to anybody in particular that I think would flip their votes. I guess I would have to take a look at it, but I do feel like that but I've been preaching this for a while, that if Josh owned it and sold it and packaged it as, this is what I did, this is what my whole game was leading up to this, and I got him out. The problem that I see is that Paul would be so Vanessa Russo and want to vote for Christmas. And then if he, also if Matt and Raven are also voting for Christmas, that means he can only lose 2 more votes. I mean, I think no matter what happens, it's going to be 5-4 or 6-3. It's going to be like, my heart's going to be in my chest all on finale night.
Yeah. And go ahead, Lana.
Well, okay, if they expect Paul to be up there, and then all of a sudden Paul's not there. They're going to have to quickly make decisions. And when you have to quickly make decisions, they're going to do it based on emotion. Like, I can't help but bring this up. And this is a very emotional cast. And so I think that Christmas is a much more calming presence than Josh is, obviously. And so I think that there's going to be, they're going to, I don't know. I just like, I can't get the sense, but they might feel calm and more comfortable with Christmas than they do with Josh. Josh being this very erratic, yelling human being. And I just can't help but think that it's Josh doing that, and even trying to own his game is not going to be able to pull votes away from Christmas.
Yes. All right. So that's how we see the jury vote going. If Brent, if you want to like maybe release what you wrote down, or maybe I'll release what I wrote down. I was less specific, so I don't know if it's going to be as useful. But if you want to see how we predicted this, you can of course go through it yourself, and maybe a great listener will help us out and write it down for us.
I will admit that I only vote because I was trying to type as fast as possible. I only wrote down Taran and me because I just wanted to show that I beat him.
Oh no, it's cool.
It's on.
And I didn't write down names. I just wrote down the tally because I
wrote down the names.
Stuff.
Well, good thing we've actually recorded this. So.
Yeah, but, so if there's a listener that wants to write this out, and so we can look at these predictions after the fact and see how close we were, that would be awesome. So. Let's talk about the final stock watch of the season. It's going to be a pretty quick one because we basically just outlined how we feel the winning chances are of each of the final three. But we'll start with Paul. Obviously, I still think that Paul is the most likely to win based on my own analysis. And I for that reason, I have to buy Paul. Puya, what do you think?
I would have to buy Paul too. I feel like no matter what this bitter leak that's been going on, the saltiness of everybody, I feel like it's still one of those situations where Paul did play the best game. And we are talking about his final speech being a little bit, just facts and no emotion, and like the cast is emotional. They're gonna need to tap into that. I still also look at Josh as someone like maybe he was too much emotion from the beginning. Maybe his impassioned speech isn't really gonna have that impact because they're like, well, this is Josh every day. He's probably gonna do that. I can still see Paul turning some votes around. I don't really see Josh turning any votes around in that scenario. So I would buy Paul. I'm buying Paul.
I'm gonna hold on Paul. I think there's no reason to buy him. I think if you're buying anyone, it's Josh. I mean, especially based on these leaks, his stock is turning around. I would buy Josh and I would hold on Paul.
So that's insider trading right there.
Right. I was going to say that I was going to sell on Paul, believe it or not. I'm just not feeling good about him anymore. And I go with my gut on these situations usually. I just don't see... If these leaks are to believe, and based on what I'm hearing from everybody, I definitely feel like that it's going to be. Here's the thing, it's going to be way closer than it should, even if he wins. Okay, so I feel like that there's no way that you can buy Paul here, Taran and Puya. I feel like you have to at least hold or sell. And by the way, I'm on the rankings list that I did for Matt Ligori. I was the only one that did not have Paul in the number one position. And there was a reason for that, because he shit all over his game in his goodbye messages. And again, I don't understand the point of lying to the jury as they're, feeling, as they're experiencing being betrayed by the house and having to sit with Julie Chen. They're going to remember that feeling as they go to jury. And then in a final two speech, you're all of a sudden honest that you controlled everything. I mean, pick a narrative and go with it. It seems like Paul is unwilling to pick a narrative here, and that's my problem with this game.
Yeah, and again, the reason I'm buying Paul here is because I'm disregarding the leaks, and that's what I did in the power rankings. Basically, like I can't analyze like a piece of rumored information, so I'm just going with my own interpretation of how I see it. But that said, I obviously I do think that it's more likely that the leak is true than not. So I do think that we could be looking at a Josh victory here. But again, sticking to my own analysis, I think Paul has the best shot. Moving forward to Josh, I would say I'm going to hold on Josh. And actually, you know what? I'm gonna buy Josh.
I was gonna say,
just because, I was thinking about it earlier, and then I was initially like hold, and then I was like, no, I'm gonna buy, and then I remembered it wrong.
Well, that was exciting.
So I think that Brent is right. I think that this theoretically could come down to a 5-4 vote, and if it's that close, I do think that if it's coming down to Paul or Josh, I'm gonna buy both of them. I think that one of them is going to win almost certainly. So there's really no point in not buying Josh for me at this moment. Brent, what do you think?
Yes, I agree to buy Josh. I feel like he's, even though I've been buying, I did actually hold last week. And so I feel like this is another prime opportunity for me to buy Josh stock here. The other thing is that, I don't know, I just feel like that there's a real gap between Josh's upside and Paul's upside. Like, I feel Paul is kind of where I expected him to be, and even if he wins, it's going to be by a really close vote. I think Josh was somebody who, coming into the season, we thought there's no way. Like, I remember watching his interview with Big Jeff, and Rob was like making fun of him, going like, there's no way this guy lasts like longer than a week or two. Like, come on, he's there. He's the Devin of the season. He's there for he's the cannon fodder. And now look at him. He has a real chance to win. So I feel like his upside is just stratospheric, and I'm so happy to buy his stock.
Oh, can you imagine if you bought him week 1? Like, I did the preseason rankings with Matt Liguori, the power rankings, and I was like, I don't even think this guy's gonna make it to feeds. Like, he's gonna be feeds gold, but I don't even think we're gonna see him. Lo and behold, here he is, probably going to final 2. It's crazy to me.
Yeah, Puya, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I'm buying. Also, I bought Paul because I had no stocks coming into this. This is my first stock. So you come at me when I want some stocks. No, I would definitely buy Josh. I feel like we've seen him he's been on that upward spiral, whereas Paul has been like going lower. So to show you what I exactly mean, I would buy Paul, but then I would buy twice as much Josh, because no matter what, Josh is the one person that's constant in both of these final 2 scenarios for all of us.
And by the way, really quickly, just to clarify what we're saying, I know that, Taran, you're referring to the hamster watch thing as a rumor, but what we heard from Allison Grodner was official. I mean, that was the producer talking to us and saying, like, how would you describe the jury? And she said, in one word, bitter. I've never seen a jury so clueless, besides Cody, as they walked into the jury and then realized that they'd been played by everybody, and they are really upset at the continued insistence of Maven. I mean, so she was telling us right there what's happening. I feel like that the hamster watch thing is just adding fuel to the fire.
See, I actually feel the opposite. In many ways, the Grodner thing made me doubt the leak a little bit, because anytime a producer or Julie tells me something about something I'm not seeing, I'm just going to assume that they're playing it up. You know what I mean? And I've seen a lot of people saying that they think that production actually may have been the leak to Hamster Watch, and that they're trying to raise suspense. I don't think that's true. I don't think they're like that sophisticated. But I do think that in an interview, I could very easily see Grodner just being like, "Oh man, they're so bitter. What are they gonna do? Tune in on Wednesday to find out." So yeah, I'm not sure I'm in on that one.
Well, here's the thing. I try to make people feel better, and I Christmas isn't gonna win, hopefully. So I'm not gonna have to get the black veil. So I feel like one of two things is gonna happen. Either Josh wins the game and Paul loses, like probably by another 5-4 vote, and it'll be absolutely freaking glorious. Like that, either that's going to happen, or Paul, for all of his hard work, and all of the hard work he did last season as well, is going to be rewarded finally for the win that I thought he deserved last season. And our boy Josh, who we thought was going to be out week 1, is going to win $50,000 and have the dream of a lifetime. So let's try to look at the positive in this and think, no matter what happens, as long as Christmas doesn't win, we're good.
Well put, Brent. Well put. I love that.
Yes. Honestly,
That's me, Puya. I always look on the bright side of things. I'm always positive around here.
Wait until the veil. So yeah, honestly, if there's any doubt that I have in terms of the leak, I think it's a genuine leak. I think it's a reliable source. I think that potentially, though, if this source is wrong, I think it's maybe because they misinterpreted what they heard on the jury, potentially during the roundtable. Maybe maybe they saw a lot of people acting bitter, but maybe they haven't been watching the season all season long. Maybe they're not a fan of the show. They're just somebody who works in production, so they know some things, and so they relayed information that they thought was true, and they heard Matt and Raven. And somebody's been pointing this out to me on Twitter as well, that like the way that it's worded says that Matt and Raven are the only ones planning on voting for Paul, no matter who he sits next to. Theoretically, that could mean that others are willing to vote for Paul depending on who he's sitting next to, and or willing to vote for Paul just depending on maybe what he says, or maybe they're just not outwardly saying that they're planning on voting for Paul. So this is there is some leeway here in terms of what this leak could mean. I think it obviously implies that Paul can't win, and I think that's the most likely interpretation. But if there's any other interpretation, I think there is some room to speculate.
Well, I think the other thing to keep in mind is that they recorded this jury roundtable, and then there's like 5 or 6 days until the finale. That's a lot of time. You don't know how people are going to change their opinions or calm down or get more upset, you know? So even though that we do have this leak, like I'm still taking everything with a grain of salt. Although, yes, oh my gosh, Paul losing 4 to 5 would be the happiest. Oh, I would be so incredibly happy. It might redeem the season.
Yes. All right. So let's do a quick let's talk about this season as a whole here. We'll do this some more after the finale, but I want to get some predictions in terms of like, what do you guys think this season is going to be remembered for before it ends? Like, what do you think is the main storyline when we look back at Big Brother 19? I mean, like Big Brother 15, we remember Andy, we remember the controversy. Big Brother 16, it's all about Derek. Big Brother 17, it's Vanessa and Steve. Big Brother 18, it's Paul and Nicole, and maybe a little bit of Pauly. What do we think is Big Brother 19 about? Brent, I'll start with you.
I think Big Brother 19 is about the massive potential of a really great cast that was totally shat upon by production's decision to insert one veteran into the game. I mean, I can't tell you how excited I was at the beginning of this season to see this cast. And remember, this cast was a little bit older than many other casts. And I was like, they have more life experience. They'll be more hungry for a win. And then, wow. I mean, talk about taking my expectations and turning them on its head. I mean, I long for the days of people actually wanting to win the money. I actually long for the days of people being self-interested and saying, you know what? I deserve $500,000. I deserve to be in the final 2. I remember like watching like Victoria or the other people who've been finished in the final 3, like Danielle Murphy on Big Brother 14. Sorry, I'm not very good with names when I'm thinking about other seasons. Trying to campaign to get in those final 2 chairs and doing everything they could. And now we have a situation literally where the person who is not competing in part 3 is totally willing to just say, you know what? I'm good. I'm out of here. I mean, how do they find people like this who have a chance for $500,000 and they're like, no, I'm good? And she's totally upended her own expectations. Christmas, I'm talking about, because I think, Taran, you're correct. Or maybe was it you, or maybe it was Lita who was talking about, as long as she gets out of the house and she has, 500,000 more Instagram followers or something, she'll be happy. She can go off and sell her book or whatever. But she's done herself a disservice in this game. I don't know that anybody really became a fan of Christmas in the house. I mean, maybe a few people, but I feel like she's going to have to deal with something that she's never had in her life before, and that's hate. She's going to get a lot of hate from the fans of Big Brother. I mean, this season, it was just, to me, it was all about 2 things: the loss of potential and the reaffirmation of how much power a vet has in Paul.
Yeah, I think 2 things. I think, first of all, that ready, set, go competition is going to be the example of this season, of how these people are so willing to tumble their games away, right? Like, I just can't believe it. It's baffling to me. I think that that's absolutely going to stand out. And I think the fact that when we talk about BB16, we talk about how good Derek was, and we do talk about how stupid the cast was. But I think in this example, it's going to be even less so about how good of a game Paul played. Like, we're going to talk that he played a good game, but I think we're going to talk about just exactly how completely useless and, willing to give up their own games for someone else this cast was, and how bad they were. I really think that that's going to stand out over Paul's impressive gameplay.
Yep, and I feel like Brent and Liana have covered the cast as a whole, and Paul coming back in. I would like to address the close but no cigars that went on this season. who the hell? I hope we never see that damn tree again. Like, at least Battle of the Block had some kind of ramifications toward people in the house. That tree was useless. The punishments were ridiculous. The Den of Temptation started looking somewhat promising, and then it stopped at 3. It was like, well, what happened? Did Gronk decide we're not going to do it again after like 3rd week? So these little things that they added in, I feel like they could have done a little bit more with, or they could have just omitted them instead of having them in, which really bared no fruit. And Cameron, we will remember Cameron as an online community. We will remember what could have been for this one hopeful, this one fan, super fan even, that only got 12 hours stay, while some other people made it to Final 8 and decided to throw competitions. That's something we're definitely going to remember. How quickly, how many of these competitions were pretty much like set in stone? How many house guests threw multiple in a row? These are things we will remember, and it's sad that that's what we're going to be leaving with, but that's the case.
If Cameron makes top 3 on America's favorite player, that will be legendary. That will be remembered. Cameron from AFP. So yes, I think when we look back at this season, I think that there are good lessons to learn. I agree, Brent. I don't think that they're going to be remembered, though. I do think that when we look back, I think people are going to think of this cast not as one with potential, but one that was incredibly dumb, and that obeyed Paul. I think people are going to look at this season as Big Brother's Redemption Island. Like Paul, he had all these advantages. This was the second time around. He was in a cast full of dummies, and he plowed his way to the end. And then if Paul loses, I think there's an entirely different narrative. And I think we're looking at this season as, how Paul lost the game. And I think that's a huge part of what we're going to be looking at. And I really think that there's going to be, I think people are going to remember the bullying too. I think that's going to be something that people remember regardless. I think it's going to be, this was a somewhat controversial season. There was a lot of bullying and antagonizing. And then Paul either dominated like Boston Rob, or sucked like Russell Hantz. I think that's going to be the storyline of the season, and I think that's what people are going to remember it for. And I wish that we would learn some lessons about this. I wish that we would remember more so that like Paul shouldn't have been there in the first place. That should be the lesson that we take from this. But I do think that instead we're really going to place the blame on Paul and the people in the cast rather than the producers and the casting people. Which I think is unfortunate, but it's the way things go. So let's get into some questions. We got one from Dan who asks, "Who was the most disappointing house guest this season?" And I feel like there's a lot of options here. This is a stacked field. Liana,
who wasn't disappointing? I really don't even know. I mean, I guess Matt, because he was literally useless. At least we got the fight and the cereal gag out of him. So, but I mean, in terms of gameplay, what did that man do? I have no idea.
Yes. Here's the thing about Matt. He's certainly one of the most useless players of all time. But he gave us what?
That's true.
And that was a pretty valuable contribution. Puya, what do you think?
Oh, I was going to say Matt, so I'm not going to say Matt. So I'm going to pick Jessica. I'm sorry. Jessica, I feel like there was a lot to be seen. I feel like I know that on Liana's preseason stuff, Jessica was the winner pick. I drafted Jessica in the drafts I was in. And I feel like there was a lot to be played. And then when Cody left, we did see this new Jessica. And then we did give her this power. We gave her the halting hex. But I'm not.
Brent hacked into your microphone to prevent you.
I'm so sorry, Puya. Yeah, your robot voice came back, but I'll take over for what you said for Jessica. I mean, I can call a spade a spade. Jessica, more than anything, it was. Look, I love you, Jessica, and you were great to talk to, but gameplay wise, you were a bit of a disappointment. But I look, here's the thing. I talked to Jessica and I understand where she was coming from. I guess I just have to call her out for not being able to see the things that I felt like as a fan of the show, she was supposed to be able to see. But in fairness, those things that she was supposed to be able to see were hard truths for her to see. Basically, I was asking Jessica to see the fact during her HOH that girl, you have no allies. None of these people are willing to work with you, and they can't wait to get you and your boyfriend out of the game. I mean, that's what she needed to realize in order to make the correct move, but she was trying to make allies in the game, and that's why she made the move that she did to put Ramses and leave him up on the block. I know it was a terrible move, but at least talking to her, I got to understand a little bit more about her perspective and what she was trying to do. She was trying to think big picture, and it didn't work. And so I guess I can hold her accountable for that, but at least I understood where she was coming from. I'm going to call out Alex because Alex is also a fan of the show, so she tells us all the time, and she did the unbelievable. She torpedoed not one, but 2 games. She had her ride or die, who was an outgoing HOH, and she decides, with his blessing, I guess, to take it upon herself to throw an HOH to someone else. It's amazing to me because she knew that whole HOH was being thrown. So it's like, if everybody's throwing the HOH and one person's winning, then obviously somebody who's throwing it is not in the know. She never even considered that, you know what? I might not be in the know. And that, to me, is a huge indictment of her game. Obviously, the fact that she took a slogan that Paul had during Big Brother 18 and turned it into a mantra that was an unbreakable promise, obviously, is something to look at as well. And her continued stupidity almost until her eventual eviction was just, at times, it was too much for me to bear, and it drove Melissa Denny to utter insanity. So I have to call her out.
Yeah. I think the reason why I didn't say Alex was because I was so low on her going into the preseason. I mean, this is somebody who just like freaked out when she did that first interview and just looked completely awful. I mean, she drinking the 2-liter bottles of Coke like it's a baby bottle. I swear, this woman, I get it. Like, oh gosh, yeah, she was the worst.
Yeah, and I do see what Puya, what you were saying with Jessica in terms of like she was basically the one person like throughout the season. Paul is like he pushed people away one by one. People saw what was happening, and they had a chance. If they had won something, they would have had a chance to do something about it, but they didn't win anything, and so they never had a chance. Jessica was the one person who had a chance, the one person who did win a competition when she knew what was happening. She had already been pushed out to the sides, and she still didn't take that shot. And so I think I can see why you might be disappointed with it.
Yeah, I feel like, again, I was very impressed watching her reintegrate with the house after Cody was gone. I was really, really looking forward to see what she had going. And then when Cody came back in, I thought, okay, maybe she's going to work him back in. And like, kind of like what happened when Victor came back and Paul was like, hey, listen, so this is what's going on. Like, I'm back in. Like, Paul kind of did that too. Paul was on the outs in BB18 at the early on goings of the game. And then Victor left and he was able to reintegrate with the house. And I feel like Jessica was doing that. My problem was when Cody came back, and I mean, Liana said this earlier, when you fall in love, I guess you do crazy things for love. And that is what happened with her and Cody. That is why she went back to him. But I was just disappointed because she was like top 3 on everyone's radars pretty much going into the season. Everyone was smitten with her. Everyone was really thinking she has much potential. And it was just disappointing to see her go out the way she did. And then to lose Ramsey on her reign, being like one of her like 2 allies at that point, was kind of disappointing as well.
Yes. All right. I got to say, most disappointing house guest was Jillian. And there's really not much else to say about it, which I think proves my point. So
how dare you? It's Queen Jillian. Thank you very much.
Let's go to A Tiger, who asks, which couple do you think will last the longest? This is, I think this.
Oh, this is so easy.
I initially thought this was easy, but with all the hanging out that Mark and Elaine are doing in Jury House, you never know. Brent, I assume you're gonna say Jody.
I mean, come on. Are you like, is this really a question? Like, I mean, the only reason that Elaine is giving Mark any time whatsoever is because the only guy that's available in the Jury House for her to play with. I mean, that's the only toy that's around for her to, play with the handles a little bit. I mean, that's the reason. But Cody and Jessica, to me, are one of these, and I'm gonna call it. I just feel like they have this sort of like epic love or an epic lust, maybe. But I'm not sure what it is, but I feel like, I sometimes feel like epic lust can evolve into epic love. I mean, I certainly have had that in my life. So, I mean, it can happen. I feel like that they are clearing away the couple that's going to be together the longest. And I would frankly be shocked if they broke up anytime soon.
They went over the top under the covers. Yeah, I gotta go with Jody too. They fell hard for each other, and when you fall in love with somebody and you fall in love that quickly, so immediately, and have such a strong bond, like that means something. And I really do think they're gonna stay together for a while.
I feel like the other couples went in and they fooled around in the house. I think these two found each other in the house. And I feel like Cody is very, I think the way he feels about Jessica have been genuine. And then if you want any proof that Jessica's feelings towards Cody are genuine, look no further than the fact that Jessica has asked all of her followers and all of her fans to put aside their votes for her, unite the vote, and vote Cody for AFP. I feel like if you do something for someone like that who you've known for like a certain amount of days, there's got to be something more than just what
and that's
other people may be seeing.
Right, and she better remind him of that for all of her livelong days too, because he may win this very well because she decided to do that. Because going into this, I was all about like, I'm gonna vote for Jessica. I always thought of the two of them, she was the easier one for people to get behind, and that's kind of why I did it. But then she was on Instagram saying, you know what, don't vote for me. Let's all unite behind Cody. I was like, okay, I can get on board with that. And I still feel like Jessica will win. That's the great thing about her doing this, is that Cody is America's favorite player. Then I feel like Jessica by default wins as well, because she knows what's really going on the outside. So I'm all about it. And Cody and Jessica rock. We love you.
All right. Another question from Josh Swartz, who asks, rank all three finalists on where you would put them in the all-time winner rankings if each one.
Please don't make me.
I think we've answered this about Paul. I think it's probably around the same for me. I think he comes in around like the 6 to 8 range. Being a returning player, that's a huge advantage. Coming to the season, we point out a lot of mistakes that he's made along the way. However, despite that, it's been a very dominant game as well. So I think he places somewhat high there, the 6 to 8 range. Puya, what do you think?
I feel like I have to co-sign. It would be in the top 10 for sure, and lower than 5 probably.
Yep, I co-sign that as well. I think he could probably get as high as 5 on my winner rankings, and maybe even as low as 10. So but I'm gonna split it down the middle and say I'm gonna put him at like number 7 for now.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
Sorry, that was like, I have nothing insightful to add.
Got nothing. Yeah.
Yes. So what about Josh? If Josh ends up winning this.
Can I ask a question about Paul then really quickly? Because I know, was it Cleo, the Leo, or BB? Sorry, I mixed people up on Twitter. But they said, okay, so Dan gets to the final 2 and wins. He plays another season and he gets to the final 2 and loses. Paul, let's assume he wins. Obviously, this question is asking us to assume he wins. So he gets to the final 2, loses by 1 vote, comes back again, wins. I mean, why is he not considered? And he basically controlled everything. Why is he not considered to be amongst the Andys and Dereks and Dans of the world, Taran?
Well, I mean, I think that's an easy question to answer.
Okay, good.
Given a lot of time and detail. Okay. But to the gist of it is, I think that Dan, he played a very dominant game the first time around. He won unanimously as a rookie. Most people play only one time. Then coming back, he plays another dominant game against crazy odds. Ends up losing, but he came about as close as he could have. And then you look at it the opposite way. Paul came in the first time around, and his game that first time around was not very great. If Victor hadn't come back into the game twice, we probably would have seen Paul not even make it to the end. Right. And then when he does make it to the end, he loses because of his own poor jury management. Then he comes back. He has a huge advantage being the only vet in the game. Which is the basis of his strategy. We don't know if he ever could have been this dominating without the using of being a vet as his main strategy, because the only time he's played not using that strategy, he didn't do quite as well. And then so if he wins this one, it's basically your first time around is much more important in terms of like where we want to rank you. The second time around, if you have the stigma of being a winner and you have other like big vets that you're playing against, that's a much there's a lot of differences essentially. Like we can't just look at the placement and assume that everything's the same.
I guess the people that would disagree with you would say that Paul did have a bit of a stigma because he told these people all the time that he was a finalist last season and he lost by one stinking vote, and they knew that, and yet he still got them to keep him around. Look, I'm not a Paul apologist. I'm just kind of like putting forward the possibility, Puya, of that there may be some room to argue here for Paul.
I think there is room to argue to go forward. I feel like for me, the basis would be like, if he wins, it would have been on his second shot, not his first. I feel like that would be the main one, where like a lot of people were one and done. They went in the first time, they got it done. The second time around, if you do go as far as you can, that's impressive. Now, Paul did make it to the very end, did lose by one damn vote. And a lot of people would argue that maybe he should have won. But where we're standing right now, there were like, I feel like someone like Dan, for example, a lot of people do draw the comparison of, well, Dan was safe for a month, Paul was safe for 3 weeks. That is true. And then Dan also, you have to factor in the fact that had Danielle gone out like week 2, Dan would have left with her. So Dan was able to keep her and like had to keep her in the initial running. So that's where that kind of drops off. And then Derek obviously one and done wins. Dr. Will, for all intents and purposes, goes into an all-star house where he is #1 target. He is winner, and he still makes it to the 4. Where with Paul, it kind of feels like a lot of people, where people would want to argue against him and discount him, is the fact that he was placed in with some sheeple. And, you know, adversity considered, the fact that he was able to keep himself safe through all this stuff is impressive. But I feel like it's one of those things where a lot of people are going to want to judge his performance based on the cast that he was placed in with. And I feel like a lot of people do not value or do not think of this cast as a powerful cast, as a strong cast.
I think for me, I have to think about the first games that they both played. Like, that's what I put much more stock in. Okay. And I think Paul's first game compared to, you know, any one of those people we consider in the top 5, I think it pales in comparison.
Okay.
Yeah, that is the main point. And then like what we're talking about in terms of like stigma coming back, we've seen the numbers. Like if there is a returning player in a season, they basically will make final 2. So if there's only one of them, they've basically guaranteed their way a long way to the end. Like they have such a huge advantage. If you have multiple vets in a season, it makes it a little more difficult for you to be the one that makes it down to the end. You have to at least beat out those other people. And then when you do look at the specifics of the cast, when Paul came into this cast, he had a lot of people that loved Paul, that were like, we love Paul, we want to work with Paul. When Dan was in Big Brother 14, right from the get-go, people were like, we need to get him out. We hate the fact that he was a coach and got to come into the game. We're never going to vote for him in the end. There was an entirely different air about how they saw Dan versus how they saw Paul. And I think that's also important. And it comes from their performance in the first game. I think that if Paul had won his first game, there may have been a slightly different perspective of him, maybe enough to alter how they treated him. But that's a lot of details when all you really need to know is Dan did it the first time and Paul didn't. So let's talk about Josh. Where do we think Josh falls? If Josh ends up winning this game, do we think he ranks in the top 10, or is he maybe a bottom half winner? Liana, what do you think?
I think he's got to be a bottom half winner. I mean, he kind of fell backwards into this, right? Like, this is not because of his own doing. And that's what I look for in a strong winner. You have to actually have your own agency to move your game forward. And he moved forward as a byproduct of Paul's game.
Right. Yeah. I agree. And I'm a Josh fan as well, but I couldn't have him. Like, there had been 19 seasons of Big Brother. Let's remove Eddie because that wasn't even really Big Brother. So there's 18 winners. I mean, I'd probably have Josh maybe at 14 or 15. It would be pretty low, actually, because as Liana correctly points out, he didn't get here because he decided to. He got here because he let Paul have the option to pick him, and Paul picked him because he thought that Josh was the easiest person to beat, along with Christmas, who he thought couldn't win either parts 1 or part 2 of the final HOH, which he was correct about. So I feel like that there's no Josh fingerprints on his game whatsoever. And if he gets a win, I mean, here's the thing, I think I could move him up a little bit more if he cuts Paul at the end and wins the game and declares himself, you know, this was my big move, right off into the sunset, rather than, you know, if Josh actually wins final HOH and takes Paul, I feel like that's an even worse look. But then if he wins, I don't know if, I guess then he validates that. I also think, you know, it makes a difference whether or not Josh takes Paul or Paul takes Josh, you know?
Well, I think if Josh takes Paul, or if some combination of them, like in the finals, that Josh doesn't cut Paul, and I think that if Josh wins, I think that's going to reflect on Paul's poor jury management, not on Josh's good gameplay.
Okay.
All right. And I think there are even different ways that could happen. Like if Josh ends up winning only because the other jury members were planning on voting for Paul, but then ended up not voting for Paul because of Matt and Raven and not because of Paul, then that's even like further removed from like Josh like effectively implementing a strategy that he knew what he was doing. And I wrote this in the power rankings. It really is just that like this is a case where it's the story of how Paul lost, and Josh was the biggest goat in the house, and that's why he was dragged to the final two. I think we should give him some credit in terms of like he was able to recognize that Paul was a powerful player, and attaching himself to that and being loyal was a good thing. But and some people are comparing him to Steve. I don't think this is a Steve scenario.
No way, girl, stop! Like,
yes.
I mean, I had Steve, I think at like number 7 in my rankings originally, and I think I was the highest on Steve. But I know nobody had Steve anywhere around the kind of game that Josh is playing. Steve knew the intricacies of the house, of his positioning in the house. He generally knew everything that was happening in the house, with the exception of the fact that when he told Vanessa, when she was backdoored by Becky, he mistakenly told Vanessa, you know, I won't be able to vote for you. And he didn't realize how much Vanessa held on to that. That was like the one piece of information that Steve didn't have. But other than that, he knew where all the pieces on the game board were, and he knew exactly what he had to do to get to the end. Josh, on the other hand, it was because Paul chose him. I mean, Steve at any point could have turned against Vanessa or made other decisions. He chose to stick with her because he felt like that was his best choice. He even stayed up throwing up in the middle of the night because he wanted to make the correct game decision, not the emotional decision, not the move that would look good for the fans. And he made that. Josh, on the other hand, I feel like has been a big ball of emotion, hasn't had any real game whatsoever. And if he gets to the end and wins, I feel like it's only because of Paul's bad gameplay.
Yes, I co-sign all of that. So let's move on to Christmas. Final one here. If look, Christmas somehow wins.
I will stop you. Let's not even talk about this, okay? I would put her below Eddie. I would put her below Eddie, and he's not even on the damn list. Like, she's asking to be evicted at Final 3. She wants no part of it. She does not want to sit in the final 2 chairs. How can I then say she's a deserving winner? I mean, please find something for me, Puya. Find something for me here.
I would like to make a formal request that once we hit off season, you guys gather and discuss who's the better winner, Christmas or Jordan, if she wins. Because I have to say, like, everything you guys are saying resonates with me. I feel like you judge a winner based on how much control they had in their own destiny, how much they were able to write the narrative they did to the path to the end. And Christmas, more than anybody, not only was literally carried there because she didn't have 2 legs to stand on, won competitions because they were thrown to her, but then also gets all the way to the end and still does not realize that this is a game for 500 grand, and doesn't realize that all I need to do is let 2-3 days pass, try and get to the end, and then whatever happens after that, I can, you know, get forgiveness or deal with it later or cry in my Lamborghini because I have 500 grand in my bank account. Like, these are just little things that I feel like any person should understand. I mean, you brought up Victoria. At least Victoria was like trying to get there. At least like people were hustling.
I really do
thought she was doing a good job.
Right.
Yeah.
I really have to say that I do hope that Rob Cisternino in the backyard really calls Christmas to the carpet and says, you know, as a competitor, you had a chance to win this game. You chose not to. You definitively chose to sit out and to quit. How do you respond to your fans that are disappointed that you never even tried to talk to Josh about getting to the final 2? How do you respond to people who watched you on the season, who rooted for you, who wanted you to do your best, who thought you had a chance to win, and you said, nah, I'm good? I really hope he just calls her out. Please do that. If not, I will come with you and I will do it for you.
Well, is there any validity to the argument that if Christmas hadn't broken her foot, she would be a different player? She would be out for blood. So maybe we shouldn't judge her based on her personality change from a freak accident.
Well, I think that that's definitely a possibility that she would be a different player if she didn't break her foot. But like, what? So,
Yeah.
right? Like, we're judging her game. She broke her foot, and this is the game that she decided to play, and that's what we have to go off of. I mean, somebody who is actively saying, "Do not take me to the final two," like that blows my mind, and that's the only thing. Like, I can't get that out of my head, and that's why if she does somehow win, like, my gosh.
And this isn't a new thing for her either. I mean, just a week or a week and a half ago, we saw her tell Josh when he said, "I'm taking you to the final two." She said to him, "Well, I don't want to make that decision right now. I really can't promise that." And I feel like that is one of the reasons why Josh is not really considering taking Christmas to the final two. You know how different this game looks if Christmas tells Josh, "Yes, I'm taking you to the final two. I want to go with you. We've been ride or die since the beginning." Josh would have a really hard time turning on Christmas. And because of that, if Josh gets to the end with Christmas, I think Christmas wins the game. She has a chance to win. And she's just shitting it all away. It's so frustrating.
I feel like Christmas, so we're talking about if she didn't have a broken leg.
You've gone robot again. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Puya. I know that's very frustrating. Yeah. All right. Well, we've said enough about Christmas, so
yes, we're gonna wrap this up. This is a great roundtable. We'll of course be back tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern. Puya will be joining Liana, Matt Ligori, and I to run down Josh's game throughout the season. We're gonna go week to week. What did Josh do? Is there something that maybe he was doing that we're overlooking, or maybe he did less than we're even thinking? We'll run through it all and figure out who Josh is and what his game was. So that'll be a lot of fun.
I will say, just really quickly. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. But just make sure, because I know that people will come at me on Twitter. I feel like you guys need to give Josh credit for the week that he was on the block and he pretended to be sad the entire time. It's so hard to continually lie and pretend in the Big Brother house. And I do want to give him credit for that move, because that's what stayed Jessica's hand from using that veto, And I feel like if there's ever a point in the game where Josh deserves a little credit for any agency that he had on the game, it's that week.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so we'll be talking about Josh's game, that and much more. And then on Wednesday, we will run down Paul's game and figure out what's going to happen.
And I'll be there for that one.
Yes, I believe it will be Rob Sesternino as well as Brent will be on with me for Wednesday as we go through Paul's game. And that will be 10 a.m. Eastern as well. And of course, we will be recapping the season finale of Big Brother 19 on Wednesday night. Rob will be in the backyard doing the interviews alongside Will Kirby and Morgan Willett. So he will not be here. I will be hosting the finale coverage.
What?
I am sorry. And of course, there's going to be some American Ninja Warrior coverage headed your way. I do that podcast with Lita Brillman, who also happens to be my next guest on the Taran show that I will be releasing tonight. So check that out if you want. She talks about a lot of personal things. That's Lita's thing. And so if you're interested in learning about Lita, or just she's a lot of views too.
Yes, she does.
Yes, lots of stuff to talk about with Lita. Make sure you check that one out. So yeah, I think that's all we've got for you. Puya, how can we find you on Twitter?
At Puyaism, Pooyaism. Whoever is hacking my microphone, I'm gonna come after you later.
Liana, anything you got? Anything for us?
No, just a reminder that if you do have questions for Rob, for him to ask the house guests, please send those to bbfinale@robhasawebsite.com. And we'll try to do our best to get Rob to ask all those questions. Oh, and I'm on Twitter at Liana Boris, LianaBoraas.
All right. And Brent.
Yes.
Finish us out.
I'm at One Lucky Gay. You guys know that. And I really want our hashtag to be hashtag Josh. because it's so fun to say.
Yes, Josh Joss is a good one, and then also Tupperware of Rage.
Yeah, you just
is a
know
pretty
because
good
you
one.
came up with it. Yeah.
Hey, Liana agreed.
I like the Tupperware of Rage. I will say that.
So you can choose. I think they're both good. So yes, of course, you can find me on Twitter at Armstrong Taran, and also there's a third hashtag here, Cameron for AFP. Make it happen. Not Alex. All right. So thank you everyone for joining us. This season has been so much fun. Talking through, this season, say what you want about the season. It's been fun talking about it. I've really enjoyed it.
Right.
These roundtables have been the highlight of the season for me, along with the,
We've made
the
it
morning
fun.
recaps. Yes, we certainly have. So I hope that you guys had fun with us as well. So for Brent, Liana, and Puya, I'm Taran Armstrong. Hashtag Tupperware of Rage /Josh /Cameron for AFP. We'll see you next time.